Magical World War I. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126, Wings of the Young Dragon. In Charlotte's mind, the secret sword play of Asilo's angel thorn was like the sound of a spring, clear and transparent. He only knew how to use the sword play with various changes and complexities. He knew the reason but not the reason. But at this moment, every change was as sharp as day, without any stagnation. Charlotte suddenly whistled and stood up. His speed suddenly increased by 3 points, and his swordplay increased by 5 points. He made 16 sword strikes in a row, and the sword light gathered, like a young dragon soaring into the sky, forcibly getting rid of the mysterious night and flying into the sky. The fourth movement of the 12 movements of the angel, Wings of the Young Dragon. This swordplay change was not in the moves, but in the manipulation of the bloody glory. It could make the bloody glory flow 30% faster, which was manifested as a 30% faster speed and a 50% faster swordplay. It made the strange changes of the angel thorn, like a thunderous and lightning-like fast sword, more vivid. After getting rid of the mysterious knight, Charlotte's sword flashed down a little, stopping the mysterious knight from jumping into the air. A flaming hand grasped the firewheel silver rhino and fired at Jonan. This world-famous gun that once shot Archduke Ferdinand fired another magic-breaking armor bomb that could change the history of the old continent. Jonan's smile had not yet faded when he was hit in the head by the gun. His entire head was blown to pieces by the magic-breaking armor bomb, and his headless body fell to the ground. Charlotte didn't dare to continue to entangle him. After firing a gun, another flaming hand took out another firewheel silver rhino and fired 8 shots in a row, pinning the mysterious knight firmly to the ground and slightly blocking the guardian knights who were about to rush into the battlefield. The whole person was like a big bat, crossing the night sky. He rolled to the ground, performing the lightness technique, the spirit spider technique, and the fourth movement that had just broken through, Wings of the Young Dragon. He ran towards the Silver Pigeon Castle. The mysterious knights and the guardian knights were like crazy, and they chased after them closely. Relying on his quick movements, Charlotte saw the Silver Pigeon Castle in sight, and looked back at the dozen or so extraordinary people chasing him. His heart moved slightly, and he turned a corner and began to sneak around these extraordinary people who had gone crazy and mad because of Jonathan's death, and had no other thoughts in their eyes except killing him. In the old world, the extraordinary people crushed ordinary people one-sidedly. Charlotte had insight again, and he attacked from behind the South Seraph army. For a moment, it was like entering an empty land, and he led more than a dozen powerful extraordinary people to rush around. In just half an hour, he had led this group of extraordinary people to make a big circle, and the South Seraph Restoration Army was slightly confused by the rush. Charlotte continued to work hard, and led these dozen extraordinary people to continue to circle around the South Seraph Restoration Army's siege army. When he made the 6th circle, the siege army finally collapsed. Dorothy took a magic card, Wind. It blew up countless dust, as if someone was chasing these people. Dubin decisively ordered to open the city gate and chase the army of the South Seraph Restorationists. The situation on the battlefield reversed, forcing the extraordinary people who were chasing Charlotte to give up the pursuit. The more than 10 knights supported the original blood boundary, resisted the bullets and arrows flying on the battlefield, and followed the defeated army to leave the battlefield. Charlotte stood on the battlefield and witnessed all this, but he was no longer able to participate in the battle. Although he had not been in the battle for a long time, he crossed the entire army of the South Seraph Restorationists in front of him, fought with knights who were far above his level, and was chased like a dog. At this time, the bloody glory was almost consumed, and the combat effectiveness fell to the bottom. This battle lasted until dawn, and Dubin drove back more than 1,000 surrendered soldiers. This time, Charlotte didn't dare to accept the surrendered soldiers at random. This army was the most elite army of the South Seraph Restorers. Even if they surrendered for a while, they might turn against him at any time. He hesitated for a moment and prepared to send these people to Strasbourg to be dealt with by the Empire. However, after such a battle, Charlotte was inspired. He modified the details of the document that was originally to be sent to the Empire, and changed it to say that before they arrived, the elite army of South Seraph had already captured Silver Pigeon Castle, killed Baron File's family, and robbed all the Baron's property, leaving no centime behind. He led the army to fight hard and recaptured Silver Pigeon Castle, but the poor baron's family could not even find their bodies. Perhaps these South Seraph ladies sent their heads back to South Seraph to boast of their martial arts and achievements, but they failed to recapture the baron's property. Charlotte felt that this revised document was more perfect than the previous one, so she sent 5 combat teams to escort the more than 1,000 prisoners. While reporting the results of the battle, she also sent her own documents back. After finishing this matter, he returned to Silver Pigeon Castle, and the diary sent back another thought. Although Charlotte repelled the South Seraph Restoration Army 3 times, she had left Silver Pigeon Castle, and the maze failed. Charlotte Mecklen is fighting against the South Seraph Restoration Army as the temporary commander of Silver Pigeon Castle, meeting the requirements for arranging the 3rd maze. Silver Pigeon Castle is about to start the 2nd maze. Please resist the 18 attacks of the South Seraph Restoration Army. During this period, you must not leave this place or surrender. Charlotte was very discouraged and thought, can it get better? I fought so hard to repel the South Seraph army, but because I went out of the city to fight back, I lost the 3 previous battles. Also, I remember adding NPCs to speed up the maze. Why does it work in Machupi but not in Silver Pigeon Castle? Is this thing discriminating against me in secret? Charlotte was indignant when the diary vibrated slightly and another thought came out. Charlotte Mecklen had defeated the South Seraph Restoration Army once, and after the maze, a passage would be obtained that could directly connect to Machupi. He felt better. If I can connect to Machupi, it will be much easier for me to move the baron's property. Bah! If the Silver Pigeon Castle is turned into a maze, why should I move the property? The entire Silver Pigeon Castle is mine. Even if the baron has an heir, he can only manage the apparent Silver Pigeon Castle, not the real Silver Pigeon Castle. Charlotte was imagining how happy her life would be when the Silver Pigeon Castle was also turned into a maze. Unexpectedly, the diary vibrated again. The count has been completed, and the upper limit of digital recognition has been exceeded. Please enter the NPC number manually. Charlotte finally understood why the Silver Pigeon Castle had so many people, and theoretically they could all be turned into NPCs, but the maze process did not increase. Considering that the Silver Pigeon Castle was a city in the late Middle Ages, and it was not a big baronial territory, she casually filled in 586,000 in the diary, and the 3rd page of the Labyrinth of Agneres disappeared, and there was no movement again. Charlotte waited and waited, but there was still no movement in the diary. Then she noticed that the 3rd page of Agneres Labyrinth should have disappeared, but it had only just disappeared. She sighed and thought to herself, this broken maze has so many bugs. Chapter 127 Spiritual Leader, Final Totem. The young man in exquisite armor and holding a black knight's spear looked at the remnants of the defeated army and thought of the murdered Jonan. There seemed to be a fire burning in his heart. He wished that Charlotte was in front of him and he could shoot this bastard to death. More than a dozen generals of the South Seraph Restoration Army gathered together. Everyone was a little depressed and a little sad. Some even sobbed softly. Charlotte really didn't know who Jonan was. Jonan was the last prince of South Seraph and the only member of the royal family. If he was willing to surrender, he would not be the Grand Duke of South Seraph, but he would be a Viscount at least. If the Emperor was particularly happy, he might be made an Earl. Jonan was also the highest spiritual leader of the South Seraph Restoration Army and the last totem of the South Seraph. His death was as important to South Seraph as the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. It was like the collapse of the sky and the cracking of the earth, and the roar of the mountains and seas. The South Seraph could not bear this result. The young knight said decisively, we must attack Silver Pigeon Castle and kill everyone. I must kill the murderer who killed Jonathan with my own hands and let him taste all the tortures in the world before he dies. Even so, Jonathan cannot be saved. I am guilty. The young knight burst into tears. Jonathan was like a father to him, training him from an orphan to a high-level knight. Jonathan had no talent in the extraordinary path, but when he was young, he went to study at the University of Byron. He could be regarded as an excellent teacher in guiding young people. It was Jonathan who taught him personally and made him learn the blood and flesh furnace of the Abulahan clan, and practiced the Abulahan family's knight's spearmanship golden requiem to perfection. The Abulahan clan is one of the 6 vampire clans, and is ranked alongside the Adonis clan, Bilus clan, and other 5 clans. It is known as the #1 night clan of vampires. The clan's secret blood and flesh furnace is the #1 night breathing method among the 37 vampire clans, and is paired with a golden requiem, which is both a meditation technique and a knight's spearmanship. There have been many high-level knights in successive generations, and even holy knights have appeared frequently. The Abuhohan clan's secret method and Hattingen Thunder and Storm University are both the best inheritances for training knights in the old continent. An old wizard comforted him, "Zeus, don't blame yourself too much. You have tried your best. It was the Byron man who was too cunning. I have captured one of their people, forced him to interrogate for some clues, and used divination to figure out his origins. He's from Behemoth, went to Strasbourg to study at university, and came back to serve his hometown. He still has relatives in Behemoth." Zeus stood up suddenly and shouted, "I will kill his family and let him taste the grief of losing his relatives." "Where are his relatives?" the old wizard said helplessly. "According to the results of divination, he has cut off contact with his relatives, so my divination can't calculate related things, but we can capture some Behemoth people to inquire. He is such an outstanding person. He can become the commander of an army at such a young age. He must be a household name in Behemoth. This man is also cunning." Jonathan introduced himself in front of the two armies. "I am Jonathan of the South Seraph Restoration Army. Many of you should have heard of my name." He introduced himself as, "I am the captain of the Knights of Favonius, the commander of the Fort of Silver Pigeon. Mr. Jonathan, let's duel on the battlefield." He didn't mention his name at all, but this little trick is useless. "I can find out his information soon." Hughes was immediately excited and said, "Send out scouts to inquire about the young people who have been admitted to the University of Strasbourg, with emphasis on those children of nobles. Since he can become the commander of the Fort of Silver Pigeon, he must be, how could I be so stupid? Since he can become the commander of the Fort of Silver Pigeon, of course he must be the son of Baron Fee." The old wizard said embarrassedly, "No, I've inquired around. Baron Fee's eldest son is only 15 years old." Hughes shouted, "Then he must be a nephew or something. If you inquire in this direction, you will soon get results. Also, send someone to ask for help immediately. We are going to attack the Fort of Silver Pigeon again." The old wizard sighed and sent someone to arrange these matters. Zeus looked around at the generals of South Seraph, and then at the more than 10 Byron knights standing upright like flagpoles nearby. These people were from the Arthur family. They had practiced a blood clan's mantra since childhood and specialized in the original blood boundary. They were originally trained as guards for the Arthur family's direct line, and this time they were also sent out to protect Jonah. No one expected that Charlotte was so cunning and brave that she actually charged alone when these Arthur family guards were dispatched, and killed Jonah in a battle among thousands of troops. Thinking of this, Zeus was very painful, and at the same time he couldn't figure it out. Why was he, as a high-level knight, who practiced the secret method of the flesh and blood furnace and was proficient in the spearmanship of the Golden Requiem, and had the upper hand in all battles, still killed Jonah in front of him by Charlotte? He fell into deep self-blame and overlooked a small detail. Charlotte didn't care what method to use to fight. If he could use a sword, he would use a sword. If he could use an axe, he would use an axe. If he could use an anti-space long-range rifle, he would use an anti-space long-range rifle. If he could use a fire-will silver rhino, he would use a fire-will silver rhino. He was entangled in the spirit of chivalry and insisted on using a knight's lance. He never wore any guns on his body. Even when fighting, he believed that his high-level knight's gun skills were enough to wipe out any enemy. These are two different attitudes towards life, and the essence of their personalities is different, which also leads to different results. In addition to grief, Hughes was also excited. John had never had an heir. He didn't know whether it was born or he had been running around all year round. In order to restore the country, he had a problem with his body. He had always cultivated Hughes as his heir. John died. No matter how sad Hughes was, he knew that he had to be strong and continue to fight for the cause of restoring the country for Mrs. Southsera. He was trying to gather the defeated soldiers, collect intelligence, and request reinforcements. Charlotte was waiting for Mrs. Southsera's attack. His previous efforts in the battle were wiped out, and he had to resist the 18 attacks of the South Seraph Restoration Army again to turn Silver Pigeon Castle into a maze. At this time, Charlotte, after arranging military affairs, had returned to Pigeon Castle. This time he was much happier. He picked 6 extraordinary weapons and gave them to Dorothy, Frederica, Yellow Bear, Doberman, and 2 extraordinary people whose identities were exposed in the battle. These 2 extraordinary people have lived in Silver Pigeon Castle for many years. They have long regarded this beautiful city as their hometown. They also married and had children here. Their loyalty to Silver Pigeon Castle is beyond doubt. Chapter 128 Progress of the Maze-Making of Silver Pigeon Castle. One of them is named Gwen, nicknamed Spotted Deer. The other is named Bancroft, nicknamed Wind Wolf. They had gone on adventures together in their early years. After middle age, they accumulated some wealth and left the adventure group and settled down in Silver Pigeon Castle. Both of them are 10th level knights, which means they have practiced breathing and meditation to the top, but they have never been able to obtain any knight certificates and are intermediate knights who cannot go further. Charlotte showed a slight intention to recruit them. The two wanted to refuse, but looking at the extraordinary weapons in their hands, they finally didn't feel embarrassed to refuse and agreed to join the Knights of Favonius. After recruiting Gwen and Bancroft, Charlotte was also slightly refreshed. She finally felt like she had traveled back to the Three Kingdoms era and recruited the fierce generals of the time. Although Gwen, Spotted Deer, and Bancroft, the Wind Wolf, were definitely not fierce generals among the extraordinary people in the old continent, the sense of accomplishment was the same. Gwen and Bancroft joined the Knights of Favonius, and Charlotte formed a 200-man direct combat team for them. Now the main force of the Knights of Favonius, who can barely be considered qualified soldiers, is Charlotte, Doberman, Dorothy, Frederica, Yellow Bear, and the two newly formed 200-man combat teams. The rest of the combat teams are still a mob. Charlotte's direct combat team is mainly composed of the group of adventurers, as well as some of the elite patrol troops and the top fighters in the guild. Dorothy and Frederica's combat teams are all female adventurers and guild members. Doberman's combat team is of course the foundation of the patrol troops. Yellow Bear's combat team is pure guild members. Gwen and Bancroft are friends from the Yahoo Knights who have been wiped out and their own adventure period. Some of their former partners also settled in Silver Pigeon Castle with them. What surprised Charlotte was that after a defensive battle of Silver Pigeon Castle, the Knights of Favonius lost 500 to 600 people, but the number of people did not decrease but increased to as many as 7,000. Many of the soldiers who escaped at the beginning were warriors of the Yahoo Knights. They fled back to Silver Pigeon Castle and quietly chose to return at this time. Charlotte also recruited soldiers again in Silver Pigeon Castle. He had the credit of guarding Silver Pigeon Castle, and he also had a glorious record of charging into battle alone in front of the two armies, beheading the enemy commander, and defeating the South Seraph Restoration Army. He was also a behemoth and was loved by many people in Silver Pigeon Castle. The recruitment was very smooth. Charlotte even had the ability to carefully select a group of strong local people, allowing the Knights of Favonius to quietly expand to 8,000 people. Charlotte did not dare to expand the army anymore, because the finances of Silver Pigeon Castle could not support too many troops. Baron File lived a luxurious life, did not invest much in the army, and did not set aside a budget for a rich army. The next day, Charlotte began to count the Baron's personal property. At the same time, she also sent people back to Strasbourg to invite Louis Samy and Ross Bader to come to the Silver Pigeon Castle. Charlotte gave the task of counting the Baron's personal property to Dorothy. After all, Dorothy was a lady of the Sumrey family. The wealth of a mere baron was not enough to make her think, but Charlotte was not very reassured about the rest. He didn't know how the Empire would deal with him, but it would definitely not take too long, so he had to seize every opportunity to cash in the baron's wealth. The labyrinth of Agneris could make the Silver Pigeon Castle a maze, but it would not make the baron's real estate become his wealth, so it would be better to sell it. The maze is his, and the gold Eco obtained from selling the real estate is also his, which is equivalent to winning twice. Although the maze like Silver Pigeon Castle can hide some of the baron's luxury goods, these luxury goods are originally for showing off. Hiding luxury goods is meaningless. Who can he show off to in the maze? So they must be cashed in as soon as possible. In short, to turn the baron's wealth into Charlotte Mecklen's wealth, a little skill is needed, not just after the maze is formed. Charlotte had not enjoyed peace for 5 days when Lady Southsilla attacked Silver Pigeon Castle again. It was Hughes who could not contain his hatred and tried to attack without reinforcements. Charlotte now has 5 extraordinary people under her command: Frederica, Dorothy, Yellow Bear, Gwen the Spotted Deer, and Bancroft the Wind Wolf. After several battles, the Knights of Favonius have also united as one. With the support of the residents of Silver Pigeon Castle and a large number of auxiliary militia, they easily repelled the attack. Let the maze progress become 1/18. Charlotte was really happy after repelling the Southsilla Restoration Army. She deliberately sent people out of the city to provoke Hughes once, which made him crazy on the spot. Regardless of the fatigue of the troops, he attacked Silver Pigeon Castle for the second time, but was cut off by the ambush set by Charlotte and defeated again. The maze progress of the Silver Pigeon Castle has changed to February 18th. This victory has a different meaning for Charlotte. It was a direct victory achieved outside the city, in a battle between two armies. Although there were also factors of strategy, it at least showed that the current Knights of Favonius, after several battles, have already taken shape. Hughes's rapid retreat this time made Charlotte very regretful. She could not lure the enemy to attack the Silver Pigeon Castle again. A few days later, before Charlotte waited for the third attack of the South Seraph Restoration Army, she finally waited for the letter from Archduke Joseph, who asked him to attack quickly and go to Interlaken to participate in the war. The Archduke's messenger was very arrogant. He treated this 4th level clerk like a dog, bossing him around, and was very impolite in his words. Charlotte suppressed her temper and carefully asked the messenger. When she learned that the Archduke was trapped in the small town of Interlaken and the situation was very bad, she was very indignant and said that she would set out to help the Duke the next day. But the next day, Charlotte couldn't get out of bed because of acute stomach pain, so she was unable to send troops. The Archduke's messenger blocked the door and scolded her for a whole day. On the third day, Charlotte fell again and couldn't get out of bed, which delayed the dispatch of troops again. The Archduke's messenger even kicked open his door, and saw that his legs were wrapped like dumplings. So he slammed the door and left. On the fourth day, the Duke's messenger urged him to send troops as soon as possible, and threatened Charlotte that he would report his deliberate delay to the Duke. Charlotte finally stopped making excuses, and asked someone to pretend to be Lady Nancela to break the legs of the messenger, and sent someone to deliver it to Hughes, and also attached a letter that was extremely sarcastic. Hughes was furious, killed the Duke's messenger, and sent someone to send the head to Interlaken at full speed. It is said that the Duke vomited blood on the spot. Charlotte had just dealt with the Duke's messenger when Louis Samy and Ross Budd arrived at Silver Pigeon Castle with their respective caravans. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129 How could this kind of person be the murderer of Jonathan? The Empire was very wary of the great nobles who possessed extraordinary powers, and there were strict restrictions. As the 7th-rank great noble of the Empire, Baron File could enjoy the power of 8 knights to guard him. At the beginning of the war, he sent 6 of them to the Duke and followed the Duke to the South Seraph territory. Later, when preparing to attack South Seraph, the other 2 extraordinary knights died on the battlefield with Baron File. So Silver Pigeon Castle became empty and had almost no power. Although Baron File had a huge amount of wealth, he felt that he had 8 extraordinary knights and had never thought of hiring outsiders. Because the eastern great country of the earth has been peaceful for too long, many young people have no concept in their minds that hiring people to work and hiring people to die are never the same price. Charlotte also wondered why Baron File didn't hire a group of detectives and adventurers. But as he understood this world, he finally understood one thing: hiring extraordinary people to do things, hiring extraordinary people to kill people, and hiring extraordinary people to participate in wars. These 3 things are completely different prices. A few Fa'irs can get a superhuman to help you do something, and a few Aku can get a superhuman to help you kill people, but at least the price must be increased tenfold to get a superhuman to participate in the war. After all, the former 2 are selling abilities, and the latter is selling lives. The lives of superhumans are really valuable. Baron Filer only has more than 10,000 Aku in cash, which is only enough to hire a dozen superhumans to fight for him for no more than 10 days. Baron Filer is reluctant to spend money. He is also reluctant to exchange his most precious collection for money to hire superhumans. Charlotte is different. He does not value money, but life more. Of course, he will not use precious cash to hire superhumans. Those are his money, but those luxury goods that are not easy to cash out are useless when placed in the pigeon fort. Using them to exchange for money and hire superhuman detectives may allow him to survive in the next war. Anyway, those are Baron Filer's collections. Only the winner can get the most fruitful results. The loser will get nothing. Charlotte conspired with the 2 men in Pigeon Castle for a day and reached 2 deals. Charlotte gave 50 luxury items to Louis Samy and 35 luxury items to Ross Budd. They would exchange them for cash for Charlotte and use the cash to hire a group of detectives and adventurers for him. From beginning to end, the two businessmen did not meet and did not know each other's existence. Businessmen value interests. Charlotte was not at ease to hand over her wealth to the two businessmen, and would not discuss more important things with them. He just wanted to transform the Baron's wealth into power that could help him. While Charlotte was doing her best to strengthen the defense of Silver Pigeon Castle, Hughes also circled more than a dozen young people who had studied in Strasbourg. Of course, there were no photos in this era, and even portraits were rare, so he could only judge who is the murderer of Jonathan based on text materials. Coincidentally, the first file Hughes picked up was about Charlotte Mecklen. When he saw that Mr. Mecklen had a promiscuous private life and had been chased by a certain gentleman with a sword and ran naked in the downtown area, he tore up the file and threw it away, muttering, "How could such a person be the murderer of Jonathan?" As a self-disciplined person, Hughes looked down on people like Charlotte. What's more, when the two armies were fighting, Charlotte broke through the line of the South Seraph Restoration Army and killed Jonathan with his full strength. If this guy named Charlotte Mecklen had such skills, how could he be chased by someone with a sword and running naked in the downtown area? It is said that Mr. Charlotte Mecklen even looked down on his fiancée and had proposed to break off the engagement long ago. How could such a thing kill Jonathan, and in the most heroic way? Is it to amuse me? Charlotte didn't know whether Louis Samy and Ross Budd would bring him hope and help, or take the luxury goods and wait and see whether he would die in Silver Pigeon Castle. But no matter how uncertain the future is, he has to make this move and take a gamble. It is better than sitting on a mountain of gold and waiting to die. He sent the two businessmen away and locked himself in the room. This was the original bedroom of Baron File. It was very spacious in the commanding height of Pigeon Castle. There were two terraces, which overlooked the entire city of Silver Pigeon Castle and the vast plains outside the city. In terms of luxury, I am afraid that only those top mansions on the earth worth hundreds of millions can be comparable to it. Charlotte placed 30 extraordinary items in front of him. He had obtained this batch of treasures for many days, but until today, he had the opportunity to appreciate them beautifully. Baron Filio has a total of 45 extraordinary objects in his collection, 6 of which were taken to the battlefield and lost, 3 were loaned out and could not be recovered, and another 6 were given by Charlotte to Dorothy and Frederica, 1 each, and given to 4 subordinates, Yellow Bear, Doberman, Gwen the Spotted Deer, and Bancroft the Winged Wolf. Now there are only 30 left. Of course, the extraordinary object he likes the most is the carriage called Dark Luxury, which is now restored to a gem ring and quietly worn on the index finger of his left hand. Magic items and extraordinary objects are also divided into levels. Just like the extraordinary levels of humans, there are low level, middle level, high level, and even holy level. However, as a Baron Filio's collection does not have any holy level extraordinary objects, only 2 high level extraordinary objects, one of which is Dark Luxury, and the other is Floating World Flowers, which is also from the hands of the Saint Alchemy Master Stardust. The Floating World Flower is a flying prop. Only the Saint rank of the old world can fly. Flying props below the Saint rank are extremely rare. Even at the largest auction in the old world, it is rare to see one in more than 10 years. Therefore, the price of the Floating World Flower is even higher than that of the Dark Luxury. Baron File spent several years of taxes from the Silver Pigeon Castle to buy it. Even after buying it, he was reluctant to use it a few times. The Saint Alchemy Master Zinchen also got some exotic flower seeds from foreign lands by chance. After these exotic flowers bloom, they will not wither for several years, and they are born with a strange property that can float in the air. Zinchen asked many people, but no one knew this exotic flower, so he named it Floating World. This Saint Alchemy Master was inspired to create this Floating World Flower. Because he never got the second batch of seeds of this exotic flower, he was unable to create a second Floating World Flower, which made this extraordinary object even more precious. However, like floating flowers and Dark Luxury, they are not extraordinary weapons and cannot be used in combat. Chapter 130 Famous Paintings. The Floating World Flowers is a corolla, with delicate flowers and stamens, colorful and wild, not luxurious, and better looking than ordinary corollas. When you wear it on your head, there will be colorful flowers lingering, slowly soaring into the air, and you can fly on the flowers. Because the power of soaring comes from exotic flowers, the speed and durability of the flight depend on the cultivation of the driver. The floating world flowers created by the Saint Alchemy Master Xingqian can be compatible with any energy. Finding ki, blood energy, magic and spiritual energy can all control this extraordinary object. Charlotte looked at it once, but she was reluctant to take it with her, so she put it back into the box containing the floating world flowers. Although these exotic flowers can last for years, they are very easy to be damaged. They are not stronger than ordinary flowers and are just as delicate and fragile. Although the Saint Alchemy Master Xingqian sealed the seeds of those exotic flowers together, as long as the roots and branches are not damaged, they can slowly bloom and repair this extraordinary object, but few people are willing to use it casually. Charlotte thought that she should sell it if she had a chance. Although it was precious, it was not very practical. Apart from these two high-level extraordinary items, the Baron's collection was almost all mid-level. After all, he liked fine products. However, there were also two low-level extraordinary items, which were a pair of pistols called famous paintings. This pair of pistols was not a weapon. If you used one of them to shoot someone, the other party would not notice it. But if you used the other one to shoot at a wall or canvas, a lifelike portrait of someone would appear. This portrait could also interact in a simple way, singing, dancing, smiling, getting angry, and teasing, but it had no logic and reacted like a puppet. This pair of pistols, famous paintings, could only create 5 magical portraits. If the number exceeded this, the first one would disappear and the number would always remain at 5. When Charlotte got a pair of pistols, her first reaction was, I should sell them. This thing was simply a waste of time and had no practical value. If you had the money to buy it, wouldn't it be better to go on a date with a real beautiful girl? He immediately thought of Anne de Breton, and thought to himself, if I hang Anne's magic portrait at 58 Champs-Élysées, I should give Anne this pair of pistols, and then let her give me her magic portrait. Charlotte suddenly became smart. He picked up the 5 magic portraits that the Baron had secretly hidden, and was also curious about which beauties the Baron had collected. This thing obviously couldn't be seen by the Baroness, so it was not hung on a wall somewhere in the Pigeon Castle, but was secretly collected. Charlotte opened the first magic portrait, and his first reaction was that it looked a little familiar. He was sure that he had never seen this lady before. She was born with a smoky look and a charming demeanor. Although she was a little older, she was mature and charming. Charlotte thought about it for a while, and suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. He actually found many indescribable scenes between himself and this lady in his memory. Charlotte was shocked on the spot, thinking, fuck. Did Mr. Charlotte Mecklen play such a high-end game in his early years? The magic portrait was just like the small video, vivid and lifelike. When she looked over, her eyes were as clear as water. Charlotte didn't dare to look at it anymore and quickly closed the magic portrait. He didn't know this lady, but he had a memory that she was the wife of another baron in the Principality of Behemoth. Of course, the Baron didn't know about this, and the Baron didn't know about it, and the Baron didn't know about it. Otherwise, how could Sherlock Mecklen go to Strasbourg to study at university? He would have been hanged by a certain baron long ago. Charlotte changed to a magic portrait, and her first reaction was still a little familiar. This was a girl, youthful and lively, but her eyebrows and eyes had a hint of spring. Her appearance was 60% similar to the lady in the first picture, and she was also a good beauty. He quickly closed the portrait and didn't dare to look at it anymore. He also remembered this girl, the daughter of the Baroness in the first picture. Although Charlotte's memory was extremely good after looking directly at the evil god, many things would be deposited in the depths of memory if they were not thought about, just like the books in the deepest part of the library. If no one borrowed the books, the knowledge would not disappear, but it would not be seen by anyone. Fuck. Mr. Charlotte Mecklen, how did you survive in the Principality of Behemoth without being beaten to death? Karnstein killed you, maybe because this evil god was too upright and couldn't stand your chaotic life. Charlotte didn't know if this was considered a complaint about herself. He struggled for a long time before he looked through the other 3 magic portraits and breathed a sigh of relief 3 times in a row, because he didn't know these 3 ladies, and there was no unspeakable picture in his memory. Although they were also quite beautiful, they would not make Mr. Mecklen shocked. Charlotte suppressed the old memories that kept surging in his mind. He didn't want to be polluted. He collected the 3 magic portraits and prepared to burn them later. Of the 26 mid-level extraordinary items left by Baron File, 19 were not weapons. Like the dark luxury, the floating world prosperity, and the famous paintings, although they were expensive and had extraordinary uses, they could not be used in combat. He was not interested either, and focused his last attention on the 7 extraordinary weapons. In Baron Fowl's collection, there were no blood-sucking weapons of the vampires, nor were there any creations of classical alchemy. Perhaps the Baron preferred classical alchemy, and all the extraordinary weapons in his collection were creations of classical alchemy. Among the 6 extraordinary items that Charlotte gave away, there were 2 magic guns, which were given to the 2 ladies, a magic rapier to Doberman, a giant axe to the Yellow Bear, and 2 night lances to the newly subdued Dear Gwyn and the Windwolf Bancroft. Of the remaining 7 extraordinary weapons, 5 were magic rapiers. Charlotte herself had no shortage of extraordinary weapons, and after having the blood rose, she had no interest in magic rapiers. The other 2 were magic gun bags, which were exactly what Charlotte needed. The most distinctive feature of classical alchemy was the anti-space technology. Items with anti-space properties could be hidden in any object, making them very convenient to carry around. Classical alchemy did not have this technology, but it did have the ancient magic bag technology, but this technology was extremely limited and had to use extremely high-end magic materials. Moreover, as long as something was put in, energy had to be input all the time to maintain it, which was not as easy to achieve as anti-space technology. Charlotte had thought about buying a space equipment before, but the price of this thing was much more expensive than the anti-space extraordinary item, and it could easily exceed thousands of EQ. At that time, his total assets were only more than 1,000 EQ, so he was reluctant to buy it. These 2 magic gun bags can only hold 2 rifles, 5 pistols, and 1,000 rounds of ammunition respectively. However, due to the space repulsion, anti-space alchemical magic guns cannot be loaded. They are much stronger than the space bullet bag that the former warden of Kilmainham prison, Magruteller, combined with this spell weapon. Chapter 131 Magic Gun Bag. Magruteller's spell weapon is rooted in the user's body and soul. In a sense, the user's body and soul are also one of the spell materials and cannot be separated. When the user dies, the spell weapon is destroyed. After his death, the spell weapon became a spell wreckage, and the space bullet bag was destroyed. Charlotte sold it to Reggie Asu, a detective from the Rima Society who was passing by, for 25 AQ. The 2 magic gun bags are leather gloves with 5 fingers exposed, which are extremely difficult to wear and dust-proof. Baron Fell has a very obvious preference for the collection of magic items. He does not like weapons, and even more so does not like extraordinary guns. Therefore, there are only 2 magic guns in the collection, which have been given by Charlotte to Dorothy and Frederica. Charlotte did not regret it. These people helped him guard the Silver Pigeon Castle, and he did not use those weapons. It was the right choice to give them to people who could play a more effective role. Charlotte was enjoying these extraordinary items. It must be said that the Baron's vision was indeed good. Except for the problem of too few magic weapons, each collection was quite extraordinary. Most of them were worth hundreds of AQ, and a few even exceeded thousands of AQ. These things truly represented the wealth of Baron Fell. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. Charlotte asked, "Who is it?" Dubin's voice came from outside the door, and he said with a little excitement, "It's me, Dubin. I want to share a good news with you." Charlotte certainly would not entertain a man in the dormitory. He pushed the door open and asked, "What good news?" Dubin smiled triumphantly, opened his arms, and his whole body glowed with a faint and hazy light. Charlotte was surprised and said, "Fighting spirit? You have been promoted tonight." Dubin nodded fiercely. He used to study at Habask Public School and was an alumnus of Zimmermann Axelrauben. If he had not been forced to drop out of school, he would never have been promoted to knight at this age. Charlotte had never asked Dubin about this, but seeing the light on him looked familiar, she couldn't help asking, "Glorious Knight?" Dubin replied, "Yes. I bought a Glorious Knight training scroll at a high price, and have been practicing the glorious breathing technique. I just got the magic rapier over there, and I couldn't help but practice swordsmanship for a while. I didn't expect to break through." Charlotte was happy for him, and couldn't help but think of another high-level knight who practiced the glorious breathing technique, Harry Adalva, the brother of the detective Addison of the Wild Horse Society, and the only opponent he defeated in the duel. Although that time, he was not alone, and had the help of Lord Leo, and even used the guns that he promised not to use. Well, he won after all. Dubin was happy like a child. He was proud of his excellent swordsmanship and his talent, But he could only mix in the patrol army, be a third-level sergeant of the 47th level, and take care of some worthless chores. He was often depressed in his heart, but he acted cheerful. This time, he followed Charlotte to fight. He worked hard and did everything he could and shouldn't do without complaining. But as the Yellow Bear, Frederica, Gwen the Spotted Deer and Bancroft the Wind Wolf appeared beside Charlotte, he gradually became a little anxious and felt a sense of crisis. Being able to break through the power seed, have fighting spirit and become a knight, Dubin only wanted to share with Charlotte, even though Charlotte was not a good target for sharing. Charlotte said, "Call everyone and go drink and celebrate together." Dubin agreed and asked someone to notify the other colleagues. The Pigeon Castle has now been occupied by the Knights of Favonius. Several leaders have their own rooms. Charlotte even incorporated the original Baron's servants directly into his combat team, just to make him as good as his arm. Soon several people gathered in the banquet hall of Pigeon Castle. However, because of the rush, the kitchen was still preparing food, so they could only provide a few barrels of beer and a batch of fruit wine for the time being. Charlotte raised her glass first and said, "Congratulations to Doberman for becoming a knight." Dorothy, Frederica, and Yellow Bear were not surprised by this. They all knew that Doberman had outstanding swordsmanship and a solid foundation, and he would be able to break through sooner or later. Although Gwen the Spotted Deer and Bancroft the Wind Wolf were 10th level knights, they were adventurers and were promoted to knights at a younger age than Doberman, so they also sincerely congratulated him. While several of his men were there, Charlotte wanted to say something to boost morale. Even though Dorothy and Frederica could not be considered as subordinates, the former could only be considered as subordinate, and the latter simply got in. He said in a deep voice, "Before the new order from the Empire is issued, we may stay in the Silver Pigeon Castle for a long time. Although we have won many victories along the way, we failed to save the Baron's family. I don't know if there will be any punishment, but I can promise that I will take any responsibility and share any rewards with you." Charlotte was about to continue to give him chicken soup. He had no military ability. The only thing he could use was the little skill he had developed as a teacher. Someone came hurriedly to report, "Captain, Lady Nansela is here again." Charlotte put down the wine glass and walked out of the banquet hall without saying a word. Without Charlotte's order, Dorothy, Frederica, Doberman, Yellow Bear, Gwen the Spotted Deer, Bancroft the Wind Wolf and others followed him to the city wall. Charlotte saw her old acquaintance Zeus from afar and could not help but take a breath and shouted loudly, "Zeus, do you want to have a duel between men?" Zeus hated him so much that although he knew that Charlotte had too many conspiracies, he still stepped out of the crowd, stopped the Black Knight's spear, and said, "Come down." Charlotte did not expect that this guy really planned to duel by himself. He had fought with Zeus before and knew that this man was a real talent. Although he had made 2 breakthroughs in a row and comprehended 2 moves of Asilo's Angel Melody swordsmanship, he thought that the level gap was too big after all, and it would be difficult to win in a one-on-one battle. What's more, he could not leave Silver Pigeon Castle at all, otherwise the maze would fail. He was just casually provoking his opponent. When he saw Zeus standing in front of the 2 armies, he laughed and said, "It was just a joke, but you took it seriously." Zeus was furious and shouted, "Don't you have any chivalry at all?" Charlotte replied, "I'm not practicing fighting spirit, and I'm not even a knight." Where does the chivalry come from? Charlotte had a previous record. She single-handedly broke through the enemy's army and killed Jonathan, the leader of Lady South Sella. Although she said it was a joke, the Knights of Favonius and the militia of Silver Pigeon Castle did not think he was cowardly. They also cheered loudly to cheer for Charlotte and kept laughing at Zeus. Hughes stared at Charlotte, smiled coldly, and waved his hand. 2 teams of South Seraph warriors presented hundreds of heads, which were divided into 3 piles on the ground. He said, "I heard that you are from Behemoth. I picked 3 families at random. They had someone admitted to the University of Strasbourg and killed all of them. Do you want to take a look to see if there is any family of yours among them?" Chapter 132 The Duchess's Messenger. Charlotte was shocked. He had never thought that Lady Southera could be so cruel. He looked far away and even used his insight to see the 3 piles of heads. There was no one he knew, but his heart trembled slightly. He thought to himself, let's pretend, lest he really find Charlotte Mecklen's family. Although he wanted to cut off the relationship with Charlotte Mecklen's past, he didn't want it to be such a tragic situation. After all, Charlotte's brother was kind to him. Although he didn't want him to interfere in the family business, he was not stingy when dividing the family property. It was quite fair. When Charlotte thought of this, she cried loudly and pretended to jump off the top of the city wall to fight with Hughes. At the same time, she whispered, "Stop me." Doberman and Yellow Bear were close to Charlotte. When they heard his order, although they were surprised by the order, they went up without hesitation and hugged Charlotte. Charlotte struggled hard and yelled, "Let me go. I'm going to kill this bastard. I'm going to make him pay with blood." Seeing Charlotte's reaction, Hughes felt relieved and a little happy, thinking, "Sure enough, I chose the right direction. I did kill his whole family." The Knights of Favonius and the militia of Silver Pigeon Castle on the top of the city saw this scene. How could they know that Charlotte was acting? They all thought that Hughes really killed Charlotte's family, and they immediately felt the same hatred and the desire to fight side by side. They kept roaring in anger, and thousands of people shouted at Lady Southslav for being shameless. Hughes did not curse with the Knights of Favonius and the militia of Silver Pigeon Castle on the top of the city. He waved his hand, and the Southslav Restoration Army swarmed up and began the third siege. Charlotte told Doberman and Yellow Bear not to hold her anymore and joined the battle. It was still the classic volley of rifles, pistols and bows, and then the Extraordinary led their own direct combat teams to defend a section of the city wall and command the rest of the combat teams and the Silver Pigeon Castle militia. The two sides fought for more than 2 hours. Seeing that they could not break through the wall of Silver Pigeon Castle, Hughes ordered his troops to withdraw, leaving behind hundreds of corpses. This time the siege was not intense, and the defense was relatively easy, which made the maze of Silver Pigeon Castle reach the progress 3/18. Charlotte was eager for Hughes to attack a few more times, but this time, Hughes was just here to send ahead to determine whether Charlotte's family had been killed. The siege was just a matter of course, and he had no intention of continuing the battle. Watching Hughes retreat, Charlotte was a little worried and thought to herself, with this kind of battle, when will Silver Pigeon Castle be able to completely complete its maze-like transformation? Only when Silver Pigeon Castle is completely maze-like can I transport all of Baron File's property away, further control the city, and further interpret the Agramilis labyrinth to prevent the coming of the evil god. The two evil gods may come at any time. The sword of Damocles that has always been hanging over Charlotte's head may fall at any time and chop him into pieces. After all, Charlotte is not a military strategist, and does not know much about this world. His sight is limited to Silver Pigeon Castle. He does not know that at this time, the war machines of several major empires have already started. In the South Seraph territory alone, Byron has deployed 2 imperial armies. At this time, Archduke Joseph had run out of ammunition and food, and had no reinforcements. The messenger he sent was killed by Lady Nansula. He was extremely depressed and kept writing letters to his wife, expressing how much he loved his wife, just as his uncle Ferdinand loved his aunt. He also kept sending people to Strasbourg for help, hoping that there would be an army to save him from the dire straits. However, the Fars Empire, apart from sending the Knights of Favonius, remained silent and never sent a second army into the Principality of Behemoth. Until recently, 3 knights belonging to Fars invaded Felindon and Bayron. Felindon's position in Bayron is far more important than that of the Principality of Behemoth and Fars. His Majesty Julius Axel VI, the Emperor of Fars, obviously planned to abandon the Principality of Behemoth and let Duke Joseph entangle the army of Bayron. The main force of Fars was going to be like a dagger, piercing the heart of Bayron. On the second day after the Fars Empire Knights attacked Felindon, the Black Phoenix dynasty also announced its participation in the war. As the mortal enemy of the Fars Empire, they would only choose Bayron. The Orc tribes in the south of the continent also announced their support for Bayron. The situation of the Fars Empire has become precarious and is surrounded by the Tripartite Alliance. No one knows what the future of the world will be like, but at least at this time, the situation is extremely unfavorable to Fars. On the second day after Zeus retreated, Grand Duchess Joseph also sent a messenger. This messenger was a maid of the Grand Duchess. She brought 3 guards and entered the Silver Pigeon Castle. The last time the Grand Duke's messenger made Charlotte very unhappy, but in front of the Duchess's maid, he had to give her some face. After all, he was also a behemoth. The Grand Duchess's maid, named Belissa, was only 19 years old, very young, and also a little beauty. When she entered the Silver Pigeon Castle, she asked to talk to Charlotte alone. Charlotte received the Grand Duchess's personal maid on a terrace in Pigeon Castle. Belissa took a few deep breaths before she calmed down and said to Charlotte, "Mr. Mecklin, you are now the only Knight Order in the Principality of Behemoth." Charlotte was slightly surprised and asked, Did Duke Joseph take all the troops away? Belissa nodded and said, originally there was Baron Files Yahoo Knights, but unfortunately he was ambushed by Lady Nansela and his entire army was wiped out. So there are no other organized armies in the Principality of Behemoth, but His Excellency the Duke needs help. On behalf of the Duchess, I specially request Mr. Mecklen to go to Interlaken and fight alongside the Duke's men. Please set off today. Charlotte thought to herself, I still have to wait for the Silver Pigeon Castle to be turned into a maze. Besides, what does the Duke's life or death have to do with me? Although the Knights of Favonius have fought several battles and have honed a little bit of real military momentum, they are still a group of mobs. Even if I go to Interlaken, I'll just be going to die. He shook his head and said, Silver Pigeon Castle is also in danger. Those damned Lady Nansela have attacked Silver Pigeon Castle several times. I must protect this place. Belissa took a few deep breaths again and whispered, I'm sorry, Mr. Mecklen, the Duchess guessed that you might be in trouble, so she has invited your father and brother, as well as the whole family, to the mansion. As Lady Nansela, Hughes did not know Charlotte's background and failed to find his real family, but the Duchess knew very early who the leader of the Knights of Favonius was and what his family was like. All this information was clearly written in the documents from Strasbourg. Chapter 133 Please give up the people of Yinjebeo. Charlotte frowned slightly, very dissatisfied with the Duchess. This was a naked threat. Belissa took a deep breath again, suppressed the tension in her heart, and said, Please give up the people of Silver Pigeon Castle. The safety of the Duke is far more important than Silver Pigeon Castle. You staying here is meaningless to the entire war situation. Only by rescuing the Duke can this war be completely reversed. Mr. Mecklen, please put the overall situation first. Charlotte is a time traveler, and naturally has a sense of alienation from everyone in this world, but in Silver Pigeon Castle, fighting side by side with the residents of Silver Pigeon Castle for so long, there are more or less subtle and different feelings. Asking him to give up the people of Silver Pigeon Castle and save a meaningless Duke Joseph is simply ridiculous. Isn't this bullshit? Or is it Charlotte's bullshit? Belissa is a maid beside the Duchess. She is simple-minded. She has devoted her young life to the Duke's family. She only thinks that serving the Duke's family is more important than anything else, and she also persuades Charlotte according to this principle. The young girl originally thought that Charlotte would certainly show her deep feelings and show her what loyalty is. Although Belissa was a maid, she had followed the Duchess to many of the most high-end occasions and was a very eye-catching presence at many high-end banquets. There were even many young nobles who showed their affection to her. So much so that in the girl's mind, as long as she opened her mouth, it would be difficult for young men to refuse her. This was the unparalleled confidence accumulated over the years by constantly receiving the kindness of young men. Charlotte only replied, I need to think about it. He was going to have another stomach ache tomorrow. Let the pain last for 3 days first. Belissa stood up and said loudly, the Duke is in danger, and you are a behemoth. What are you hesitating about? What do you need to consider? For the Duke, isn't it an irresistible reason? Charlotte really couldn't suppress her anger, and replied, the Duke is my young father, but not mine. He is only the Duke of the Principality of Behemoth. From childhood to adulthood, my deepest impression of Archduke Ferdinand is that several taxes are collected every year. Belissa was so angry that she almost jumped up and down, and shouted, you only remember the taxes, don't you remember who protected you and allowed your family to live and work in peace and enjoy a peaceful life? Charlotte laughed softly and said, I remember that our family's caravan was robbed by bandits once. When my father went to ask the Duke for help, the Duke charged an additional fee, but did nothing. He waited for about 7 or 8 years, but he didn't expect the Duke to send troops to wipe out the bandits. Instead, he expected the Duke to send troops to attack the South Seraph territory. Besides, I always thought that after Archduke Ferdinand passed away, his children would inherit the title. Who would have thought it would be Joseph? Belissa could not stand such a cunning argument. Soon the young girl was incoherent. She felt that every word of the other party was very reasonable, but these reasons conflicted with the ideas she had believed in since she was a child. The two argued for half an hour, and Belissa sat on the ground and cried loudly. Charlotte left the Duchess's maid and left the terrace gracefully. It was a waste of time to argue with Belissa. As soon as Charlotte left, 3 of Belissa's guards rushed in. Seeing the girl so sad, the 3 of them were furious. A blond young man drew the sword at his waist and said, I'm going to duel with Charlotte. He actually dared to make Miss Belissa cry. It's unforgivable. The other 2 not only did not stop him, but said together, Charlotte, this rude person, is indeed unforgivable. We will stay here with Belissa for a while. Mosa, you defeated Charlotte, remember to bring some fruit wine and bread to Miss Belissa. She hasn't eaten for a day because of her journey." Mosa looked at the two companions who were caring for Belissa, and suddenly he had an idea that it would be better not to go to this duel. It was more important to accompany Belissa, but the words had already been said, so he could only bite the bullet and rush out of the terrace and find Charlotte, who had just returned to the city wall. He shouted, "You made Miss Belissa cry, you must apologize to her, otherwise I will challenge you to a duel and bring shame to your reputation." Charlotte glanced at this ignorant guy and said, "Miss Belissa is crying because she heard the bad news. I left her alone, hoping she could get some peace and quiet. What does her crying have to do with me? If you want a duel, go find Hughes. If you start from here, you will be able to see his camp in 4 hours at most." Mosik never expected that there would be someone like Charlotte in the world. For a moment, he didn't know whether he should jump off the city wall and really go to duel with Hughes. Mosa's intelligence clearly told him that someone was fooling the little fool, but he just couldn't swallow this breath, and said fiercely, "Don't let me know that you have offended Miss Belissa, otherwise I will never forgive you." Charlotte really couldn't stand it anymore. She used the lightness technique, the spirit spider technique, and the newly broken through wings of the young dragon. With a flick of her body, she went around behind Mosa, and then kicked the thing off the top of the city wall. When this kick was made, there was no sign, and the speed was extremely fast. Mosa was also a mid-level knight, but he didn't even react to the kick. He was in the air, his body twisted, and his feet landed steadily on the ground. He was furious and shouted wildly, "You dare to sneak attack me!" Mosa jumped with his sword, and the wall of Silver Pigeon Castle was not high, so he easily stepped on the top of the city wall. Charlotte said calmly, "Then, this time it's not considered a sneak attack, right?" He kicked the young knight in the face and kicked him out of the city wall again. Charlotte was merciful in both kicks. After all, the other party had no crime to die, it was just a dispute of pride. This time, Mosa landed on the ground, let out a long whistle, and while jumping up, the sword in his hand danced a group of sword flowers, protecting his face and upper body firmly, and rushed to the top of the city again. Charlotte took a step forward, and when she brushed against Mosa's shoulder, she stretched out her foot to hook and trip the young knight, and the knight fell headfirst for the third time. Charlotte suddenly felt that bullying a child was really boring. He used to be a teacher and had never fought in his life. Charlotte Mecklen was a silver-plated spearhead, and was not proficient in swordsmanship, spearmanship, and close combat. But after only a few dozen days of crossing over, after the cruel training of more than a dozen battles, he was already considered a master. "I should be promoted to level 7 soon and become a mid-level transcendent." Charlotte didn't even look at Mosa, who jumped onto the top of the city wall again. Mosa didn't dare to continue fighting with Charlotte and went to find his Miss Belissa in a dejected manner. Chapter 134. Such a man. The horde blew in the distance, and the South Seraph army, which was much larger than in the past few days, appeared on the horizon again. The reinforcements of Hughes finally arrived, and he also launched a fourth siege. Belissa and her 3 guards have been trying hard to persuade Charlotte to save Duke Joseph these days, and even threatened his parents and brother, but Charlotte was unmoved and leaked the news. As a result, every time he was on the top of the city, preparing for war with a painful face, he would receive the love of the people of Silver Pigeon Castle, and even many people's eyes were full of pity. They all thought that Charlotte sacrificed her future and her family for them. The most rare thing is that Charlotte never said it, and swallowed the bitter wine alone, and her image became more and more tall. This also led to the fact that every time the beautiful Miss Belissa and her 3 guards appeared on the top of the city wall, they would be hated by the people of Silver Pigeon Castle. Everyone regarded them as a scourge. If Belissa had not been the messenger of the Duchess, she might have been beaten up and sent to Lady Nancerla. No one can stand being abandoned in a war and facing the enemy's slaughter. Only a maid like Belissa, who is ignorant of the world, would think that everyone is willing to sacrifice for the Duke. Belissa looked at Charlotte standing on the top of the city wall, and her heart became more and more anxious. The Knights of Favonius were the only military force in the Principality of Behemoth. If the Silver Pigeon Castle was wasted in vain, it would certainly not be able to rescue Duke Joseph. She remembered the Duchess' instructions before she left, and her heart was conflicted, but looking into the distance, in the direction of Interlaken, she suddenly made up her mind and walked to Charlotte. She wanted to speak several times, but she remembered the information obtained by Archduchess Joseph. The man in front of her was a lewd and coquettish person who had been chased by someone else's husband with a sword and ran naked on the street. She could not make up her mind. Belissa bit her lip and thought sadly. The Duchess said that even if she used her family, she couldn't threaten him to send troops. The only last resort was to let me sacrifice such a man. I really can't accept it, but the Duke is still waiting for reinforcements in Interlaken. Belissa was tangled in her heart. When she saw Charlotte giving orders and preparing to fight, she took a few deep breaths, closed her eyes, and said loudly, Mr. Mecklin, if you are willing to give up the Silver Pigeon Castle and go to Interlaken to save the Duke, I am willing to date you. Charlotte seemed to have heard the funniest thing in the world. She couldn't help but look at the most beautiful maid next to the Duchess with a look of "Are you crazy?" He also admitted that Belissa was a beautiful girl, probably similar to his ex-fiancée Sylvie Martin. Sylvie was full of energy, and Belissa was gentle and elegant. Because she had been with the Duchess for many years, she also cultivated a calm and composed little aristocratic temperament. But he had a better and more genuine girlfriend. Charlotte didn't know how to start for a moment. He was speechless. The warriors of the Knights of Favonius burst into laughter in an instant. Anne had been to number 1 Falcon Street many times. Most of the old men in the patrol army of Lucavero district knew that Charlotte's current girlfriend was the daughter of the Count, a lady from the Brittany family. Belissa heard the people of the Knights of Favonius laughing, but she thought that these people were happy for Charlotte. After all, they were Charlotte's men, and he should be happy that he could get such a beautiful girl. The 3 guards all showed sad and angry expressions. They knew about this before they set off. As Belissa's admirers, they couldn't accept it, but they had to accept it. After all, the safety of Duke Joseph was above all else. They waited quietly, and Charlotte accepted it all. They believed that no one could refuse Belissa. They are sad. Charlotte made a gesture and finally said to Dorothy, "You explain it." Dorothy put down her hand covering her mouth, suppressed her expression that was about to burst out laughing, and whispered, "Miss Belissa, have you ever been to college?" Belissa's pretty face flushed, and she whispered, "I have taught myself the courses of Gorgias University." After all, she was just a maid, and it was impossible for her to go to college. Although she felt that if she had the chance, she would definitely be able to get into university. Dorothy said, "Do you know that there are 12 goddesses in Gorgias University?" Mosa stepped forward and said loudly, "If Miss Belissa has the opportunity to study at Gorgias University, she will definitely become one of the 12 goddesses." Dorothy smiled slightly and said, "I believe it too." Although she said she believed it, Dorothy didn't believe it at all. The 12 goddesses of Gorgias University have always been the most outstanding female students. As the crowned goddess, Dorothy did not think that Miss Belissa was barely qualified except for her appearance, which was just the bottom line. In terms of family background, temperament, knowledge, grades, performance, and even the extraordinary path, she could match the 12 goddesses of Gorgias University. The crowned goddess said, "Charlotte has a girlfriend who is the daughter of the Count of Brittany and the goddess of West Wind at Gorgia University, so his night order is called the Knights of West Wind." Belissa turned pale, and after a long while, she whispered, "How could he win the heart of Miss Brittany? That's impossible." Charlotte shrugged helplessly and replied, "You know, the serpent of fate sometimes plays a joke on mortals. Those who can stand a joke sometimes get a reward. I don't know why it gave me Annie as a reward. Praise the 9 righteous gods, praise the Black Moon goddess, and praise the serpent of fate." Belissa's face became paler and she said, "I don't believe it." Charlotte took out the Firewheel Silver Rhino 10, turned the gun handle, and said, "This is a gift from Anne to me before I went to war. It is the private collection of the Count of Brittany and there is no falsehood." Belissa covered her pretty face, turned around and ran away. The 3 guards followed closely and hurried to comfort the maid. The status of the maid of the Duchess was indeed higher than that of the ordinary nobles, but it was impossible to be compared with a real earl's daughter. Belissa really couldn't understand why a jerk like Charlotte could win the favor of the Lady of Brittany, and why the trump card she discussed with the Duchess turned into self-humiliation. Charlotte had a girlfriend of the earl's daughter. How could she accept a maid? Even if she was the maid of Duchess Joseph. Dorothy watched them disappear from sight and asked, "Does it feel good to brag to others that you have a date with the earl's daughter?" Charlotte replied seriously, "A man with a broad mind will only spur himself on and will not use this to show off." If what Miss Belissa said was not too unbelievable, I would not ask Dorothy for help to reject her. My loyalty to Miss Anne de Brittany will be recognized by Lady Black Moon. Charlotte spoke righteously, saying a bunch of nonsense that sounded reasonable, but she did not quite believe it. but she heard a crisp applause. For a moment, she thought someone was mocking her. The next second, her face changed drastically. Is it the enemy? Chapter 135. Is it you? The applause did not come from anyone around Charlotte. This meant that someone had silently invaded his surroundings, and even inside had no reaction. What shocked Charlotte even more was that he found that everyone around him was motionless. Dorothy, Frederica, Doberman, Yellow Bear, Gwen the Spotted Deer, Banker Ford the Wind Wolf, and all the warriors of the Knights of Favonius, the militia of Silver Pigeon Castle, were all like wooden sculptures, with vivid but stiff expressions on their faces, and even the wind disappeared. Charlotte wanted to summon the evil god for a moment and die with this mysterious and terrifying enemy. With a click, Charlotte pressed 6 rounds of magic-breaking armor-breaking bombs into the magazine of Firewheel Silver Rhino 10, and was about to look for the enemy. A lady who was about 40 or 50 years old walked down from midair gracefully, step by step. She had a graceful and luxurious temperament, but the clothes on her body clearly showed her identity. She was not a noble lady, but a housekeeper. Charlotte stuttered and called out, "Madam Karen, why are you here at the castle of the Silver Pigeon?" This St. Karen smiled and said, "Anne just couldn't let go and had a quarrel with the Count, so I came." Aunt Karen didn't tell her the details. Anne got Charlotte's will and burst into tears on the spot. The young lady from Brittany wanted to chase out of Strasbourg and live and die with Charlotte. How could the Count of Brittany allow this? He had a big quarrel with his daughter. Faced with his beloved daughter's insistence, he had to compromise and give in. He asked Anne to promise not to leave Strasbourg. He sent Aunt Karen to follow Charlotte and protect his safety. Anne chose reason between emotion and reason. She was still a first-level extraordinary person. Even if she was by Charlotte's side, she couldn't help her lover. But if Aunt Karen took action, she could guarantee Charlotte's safe return. Originally, Aunt Karen just wanted to quietly wait for Charlotte to be in danger and rescue her. She didn't want to interfere with the war, but Charlotte's performance just now was so good that she couldn't help but applaud and decided to show up. Anne grew up in front of Aunt Karen. In her eyes, she was like her own daughter and needed careful care. Aunt Karen was not close to Charlotte and didn't think he was the destined person in Anne's life. But in this war, Charlotte's performance was better and better, brave and resourceful, commanding with confidence, and very much like the Earl's style in the past. Especially he even dared to charge alone and kill Jonathan among tens of thousands of South Seraph Restoration Army, which made her look up to Charlotte and decided to ignore the past of this young man. Although those past, well, can't think too much. Aunt Karen thought to herself, what about men? Who doesn't act foolishly when they are young? Since he met Anne, he has changed his ways and become a new man. And the courage he showed in the war can never be faked, especially this time. He has made 2 major contributions in a row. When the war is over, he will return with honors, which is enough for Anne. Charlotte didn't know what this old lady was thinking. This Aunt Karen was the existence he had seen after traveling through time and space, second only to the 3 evil gods. In front of a saint, he was trembling with fear. Always worried that this old lady would slap him to death. It's not that Charlotte was too worried, but Mr. Mecklen's past was really unbearable to look at. Charlotte was respectful and said hurriedly, "The ladies of South Erla will soon attack the city. Madam, please go to the Pigeon Fort to rest quickly so as not to disturb you." Madam Karen was even more satisfied with what she said. When the battle was about to start, Charlotte was thinking about respecting the old lady and worried that she would be disturbed, instead of using her to fight. Madam Karen smiled and said, "Don't worry, I am also a..." Suddenly, the world became active again, with countless noisy sounds, chaotic and loud. Charlotte was slightly stunned by the sudden liveliness of the world, and it took her a moment to hear these sounds clearly. "The holy stairs, Lady Nansara has dispatched the holy stairs. Damn it, these damn ladies Nansara, they are too shameless. What should we do? Goddess of the Black Moon, please save the poor people of Silver Dove Castle." Aunt Karen did not expect that someone would steal her lines. The old lady looked up at the sky and saw a man in his 30s, dressed in coarse cloth, with thick eyebrows and big eyes. He was standing hundreds of meters in the sky with his bare hands, his posture like a spear, and proudly gazing at Silver Dove Castle. Charlotte was shocked and said, "What's going on?" Aunt Karen said calmly, "A saint appeared, and I collected a layer of the dreamland." Charlotte then reacted and asked in a low voice, "Did you also graduate from Gorgias University?" Aunt Karen smiled and said, "Yes," Charlotte said sincerely, Gorgias is a good university, Aunt Karen said calmly. I was there when you said something to Anne. Charlotte was embarrassed and dared not speak. This old lady was too scary. Saint is worthy of being a saint. The saint, who was in coarse clothes, thick eyebrows and big eyes, and was over 30 years old, made Silver Pigeon Castle full of despair as soon as he appeared. Only saint can fight against saint. In everyone's mind, the entire Silver Pigeon Castle must be 100% free of saints. Dorothy lowered her voice and said, Charlotte, you have done me a great disservice. If I die, I will never let you go. Frederica also said bitterly, I should have left long ago. I shouldn't have stayed. What's wrong with me? Should I defend Silver Pigeon Castle with you? Yellow Bear's face was gloomy, and he whispered, Captain, if you survive, remember to take care of my family for me. Doberman swallowed hard, his heart filled with grief and indignation. He had just been promoted to knight, but he ended up meeting a holy rank. Why? Spotted Deer Gwyn and Windwolf Bancroft were old comrades in arms. They bumped fists with each other and whispered, for Silver Pigeon Castle, for our homeland, this is our destiny. The morale of the entire Silver Pigeon Castle suddenly dropped to the bottom. If Charlotte had seen the holy steps of Lady Souther at first, he would have felt despair like everyone else, but he saw Aunt Karen first, and felt a sense of relief that was unique to him. He smiled slightly and shouted, Don't despair. I will lead everyone to repel Lady Souther once again, even if they have holy steps. Dorothy exclaimed in a low voice, That's the holy steps. Are you crazy? Frederica also rarely said something rough. Charlotte. You, bastard. I should kill you. And I will take the task of the third wave of assassinations on my own. Charlotte looked back at Aunt Karen. The kind-looking housekeeper performed an imperial salute, but no one around noticed the existence of this ant, just like when she appeared. Charlotte smiled and said, If I can defeat him, you must promise me one thing. Dorothy and Frederica shouted together, As long as you can defeat Lady Souther's holy steps, we can promise you anything. Charlotte looked up at the sky, full of confidence, and said leisurely, Wait for my wedding, and you will be Anne's bridesmaids. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136, Battle of the Holy Stage. Doberman, Yellow Bear, Spotted Deer Gwyn and Windwolf Bancroft all took a deep breath and asked in a tone full of doubt but with a hint of hope, Captain, do you really have a way to defeat this Saint Step? Charlotte howled, People of Silver Pigeon Castle. Raise your heads and watch how I defeat the Saint Step of South Slav. This scene will be recorded forever in the history of your Silver Pigeon Castle. Doberman. What day is it today? Doberman answered blankly, Monday. Charlotte pulled out a blood rose, pointed proudly at the sky, and shouted, Decades later, you will all remember, Charlotte Mecklen defeated the Saint Step of Lady South Slav, the mortal enemy of the Principality of Behemoth. On the Empire's payday, he waved his hand, and Butler Dart brought up the box containing the floating world flowers. Charlotte took the floating world flowers, and countless delicate flowers and colorful flowers were around her, lingering and colorful, and slowly rose into the air. Aunt Karen made a mischievous expression and then disappeared, but she only disappeared from Charlotte's sight, because she had never appeared in the eyes of anyone in Silver Pigeon Castle. In the next moment, Aunt Karen appeared in the eyes of the Saint of South Seraph, who was in his 30s and dressed in coarse cloth, with thick eyebrows and big eyes. The saint was slightly surprised and shouted, Dream Walker. A surge of flames and fighting spirit burned in his body, offsetting the power of Aunt Karen's dreams. However, he could only guarantee that he would not be troubled by dreams, and neither the people of Silver Pigeon Castle nor Mrs. South Seraph could see this ant. This is a dream walker, walking only in dreams. Sister Karen said softly, This strange gentleman, can you withdraw from this war? The middle-aged saint of South Seraph said in a deep voice, I am fighting for South Seraph. Sister Karen smiled slightly and said, So I just ask you to give up attacking Silver Pigeon Castle. The middle-aged saint of South Seraph replied flatly, I refuse. Let's fight. Sister Karen said lightly, I won't fight you. I don't think you can find a dream walker, but I will kill that young man. The housekeeper pointed at Zis, and her tone was no longer gentle, but full of coldness and ruthlessness. The middle-aged saint of South Seraph shouted sternly, I will also kill that young man. He pointed at Charlotte, who was hovering in the air. Sister Karen replied, "Okay." She disappeared lightly in the air, and the middle-aged saint of South Seraph hurriedly urged his fighting spirit, and the fire swept across the sky, but he could not find Sister Karen's trace. If the two sides fought alone, even if Sister Karen mastered the power of dreams, she would not be able to hide the other party's spirituality, but if she stayed away from him, the middle-aged South Seraph saint would be like a blind man. After Jonathan's death, the importance of Hughes has surpassed everything. He is definitely not comparable to an ordinary knight commander like Charlotte. The middle-aged South Seraph saint was panicked and hurriedly controlled his fighting spirit to rush back to Hughes. Charlotte had just floated a few dozen meters in the air when the middle-aged South Seraph saint turned around and left, retreating back to the South Seraph Restoration Army. No one saw Sister Karen, and no one knew why the middle-aged South Seraph saint retreated. All the people in Silver Pigeon Castle believed that it was Charlotte who scared away the South Seraph invader with unparalleled courage, and the entire Silver Pigeon Castle suddenly erupted in earth-shaking cheers. Dorothy, Frederica, Doberman, Yellow Bear, Gwen the Spotted Deer and Banker Ford the Wind Wolf simply couldn't figure out what was going on. This is unscientific. All right. There is no science in the old world, only magic alchemy. At this moment, Charlotte's reputation, whether in the Knights of Favonius or in the hearts of the residents of Silver Pigeon Castle, soared to an unprecedented level. Everyone looked at his figure in the air, surrounded by floating flowers, full of respect and admiration. At this moment, Silver Pigeon Castle is Charlotte's Silver Pigeon Castle. There is nothing more popular than this. Charlotte was in the air and breathed a sigh of relief. Although she knew that Sister Karen would definitely block the middle-aged South Seraph saint for her, facing the saint was still a great pressure, even more than facing the evil god. After all, the first time she faced the evil god, the real Charlotte Mecklen died, and there was no pressure at all. The second time her soul was shattered. The third time, the mysterious Blood Clan evil god did nothing. Charlotte slowly landed on the top of Silver Pigeon Castle. Actually, he didn't fly very high. He carefully collected the floating world flowers and put them back into the wooden box. This time, he lost at least 17 or 18 floating world flowers. He was extremely distressed, because this would affect the selling price. Charlotte landed on the top of Silver Pigeon Castle. The top of the castle was silent. When he collected the floating world flowers, the loudest cheers broke out. Someone kept shouting, "Long live Captain Mecklen!" This shout scared Charlotte, and he thought, "Will this expose my surname?" He hurriedly looked back, but saw that the South Seraph Restoration Army had slowly retreated and was getting farther and farther away from Silver Pigeon Castle. The shouting on the top of the castle should not be heard, so he was slightly relieved. At this moment, a thought came out from the diary in Charlotte's arms. Charlotte Mecklen defeated the South Seraph Restoration Army again, and the progress of the Silver Pigeon Castle maze, 4/18. Before he could rejoice, the diary sent out a second thought. Charlotte Mecklen, as the temporary commander of the Silver Pigeon Castle, repelled St. Vigo, and would receive a reward after the maze. Charlotte waited for a long time, but the damn diary did not explain what the reward would be. He stood on the top of the Silver Pigeon Castle and waited for a long time, and then he was sure that Sister Karen would not appear again. He reluctantly ordered the Knights of Favonius and the Silver Pigeon Castle militia to take turns to guard, and return to the Pigeon Castle. At this time, St. Vigo had a bloodstain on his face, holding the unconscious Hughes in his arms, and was roaring angrily. He did not expect that this old lady could manipulate dreams to perfection. Even if he tried his best, he still could not stop Sister Karen from dragging Hughes into the dream. The flames of his fighting spirit burned straight into the sky. After a long time, the paladin of South Seraph suppressed his temper and said bitterly, "I promise not to attack Silver Pigeon Castle." As soon as he said this, the eyelids of Hughes in his arms trembled slightly, and he slowly woke up. Hughes' eyes were still a little confused at first, but soon he woke up. He broke free from St. Vigo's arms and said to the air, "Madam, can you give me a chance to duel with that person in my dream? If you agree, I can let the South Seraph Restoration Army retreat temporarily." Chapter 137 Dream Duel. "Yes," Sister Karen's voice came from the air. St. Vigo stared at the air, but never found a chance to attack. After a long time, he said, "That woman is gone." Xiuc breathed a sigh of relief and said to St. Vigo, "I will find his flaws in my dreams. The next time we meet on the battlefield, that will be his death." St. Vigo said lightly, "You are a high-level knight, and you are also a flesh and blood furnace practicing the secret teachings of Abulhahan. Your strength is far above his swordsmanship is mysterious and spicy. It is definitely the angel thorn of Asilo, but your golden requiem is not inferior to his, Saint Vigo said word by word. Last time, you just failed to kill him within a few moves, not that you lost, you have to have confidence in yourself. Xiuc lowered his head and pondered for a long time before saying, I failed to stop him from killing Jonathan, so I lost. There is no point in finding any excuses. Saint Vigo stopped dissuading him, but said, from your description, he should not have gone to study in Fars, but to study in Bayron, just like Jonathan. The old wizard next to him wiped the sweat from his forehead and whispered, Master Vigo is right. I must have made a wrong divination. In the bedroom, Charlotte still followed the usual practice and began to practice Bloody Glory. The insight rune on his forehead shook slightly, and the next second, he stood in a wilderness. Aunt Karen was sitting under a big tree with a smile on her face and drinking tea. Charlotte hurried over and asked, Aunt Karen, do you have something to ask me? Aunt Karen said, the kid named Zeus wants to duel with you once in the dream, and promised that as long as you agree, he will let the South Seraph Restoration Army retreat. He can't kill you in the dream. It will be good for you to have more experience fighting with high-level extraordinary people. Do you want to duel a few more times? Charlotte was shocked and said hurriedly, let him attack Silver Pigeon Castle a few more times. I don't need him to retreat. If Zeus retreats, the labyrinth of Silver Pigeon Castle will be ruined again. This matter must not be agreed. As for the experience of fighting with high-level players, Charlotte just felt that he had too much, and he didn't want to accumulate more. Aunt Karen couldn't help but laugh and said, okay. I'll refuse this dream duel for you. Charlotte pondered for a moment, and suddenly said, and, please tell Xiuc for me. If he can send 100 people each time to attack the Silver Pigeon Castle 20 times in a row, I can tell him a big secret. This secret is related to the South Seraph territory, well, life and death, in short, it's very important. Charlotte certainly didn't know what big event was about the South Seraph territory, but if Xiuc really believed this nonsense, and sent 100 people each time to attack the Silver Pigeon Castle 20 times, the maze of the city would be completed. He also had a few more times to prevent Xiuc from waking up halfway and interrupting this assisting the enemy siege. Aunt Karen found Charlotte more and more interesting, and said with a smile, I can help you pass the message. Her figure slowly disappeared, and after a while, she reappeared and said to Charlotte, the young man said that if you agree to duel, he will send people to attack the city according to your method. Charlotte was overjoyed and said, tell him to attack the city quickly. Aunt Karen went to pass the message again with great interest, and came back and said, the other party insisted on a duel first. Charlotte hurriedly said, we must attack the city 20 times first. Aunt Karen found this matter more and more interesting. After passing the message back and forth 7 or 8 times, it was finally decided that Hughes would attack the city 5 times first, and the two would duel once. Then Hughes would attack the city 5 more times, and the two would duel again, and then Hughes would attack the city 5 more times. Charlotte slapped her thigh and thought to herself, this guy is actually quite vigilant. If he didn't know that I was turning the Silver Pigeon Castle into a maze, he would definitely not agree so readily. Zeus didn't understand what Charlotte was going to do. He couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he tried, but he knew that he couldn't let Charlotte's conspiracy succeed. He also didn't believe that Charlotte could know any big secrets related to the life and death of South Sela. So Zeus decided that after he and Charlotte completed a duel, he would never execute this agreement again. After leaving Mother Karen's dreamland, Charlotte continued to practice Bloody Glory. During this period of time, whenever he had free time, he practiced diligently and didn't dare to slack off. There is no way. Others practice lazily, at most they would fail to practice, or the progress would be slow, but if he didn't practice hard enough, he might have to face the arrival of the evil god. As expected, Lady South Sela sent 100 people to attack Silver Pigeon Castle. It happened that Doberman was on duty at night. Because the attack was too weak, he led his own direct combat team to repel this wave of attacks without notifying Charlotte. Doberman had just repelled this wave of attacks when Lady Nansula organized another 100 people to attack Silver Pigeon Castle. He didn't know what was wrong with Lady Nansula, and he still commanded his subordinates to repel this small-scale attack. When the third wave of attacks by 100 people appeared, Doberman finally got scared and sent someone to ask Charlotte for help. After learning about the situation, Charlotte asked Yellow Bear's combat team for support, but she herself did not show up. A few hours later, Charlotte gently touched the diary, and a thought came out: the progress of the maze of Silver Pigeon Castle, September 18th. He was slightly relieved, and thought to himself, finally, half of the progress has been completed, but I don't know if Zeus will launch a few more attacks as agreed. After the sky brightened slightly, Charlotte was brought into the dreamland by Aunt Karen, and he once again saw Zeus holding the Black Knight's spear. Zeus spread his legs, bowed slightly, and without saying anything, he launched an attack directly. Charlotte could only draw out the blood rose and use the secret swordsmanship of the Asilo family. After the two exchanged a few moves, Charlotte was suppressed. Although Charlotte practiced the 12 movements of angels into 4 movements, they are: the first movement, the fire of the morning light; the second movement, the sky of dawn; the third movement, the eternal dawn; and the fourth movement, the wings of the young dragon. But in front of the full-strength Zeus, she still pales in comparison. She can only rely on the speed increased by the lightness technique, the spirit spider technique, and the wings of the young dragon to deal with this human rider who practices the secret technique of the Blood Clan. The two sides fought for more than 30 moves, and Charlotte was finally 1 move behind and was stabbed to death by Zeus. Although he was in a dream, Charlotte still felt severe pain. When his body was broken into pieces and gradually disappeared, he shouted, "Jonathan is just a stand-in. The real Jonathan." Then he disappeared in front of Hughes. Hughes rushed forward and shouted, "How could Jonathan be a stand-in? You are talking nonsense. Come back quickly." Charlotte's consciousness returned to his body and he still felt a huge pain in his chest. He smiled softly and said, "Hughes must have been fooled." Chapter 138, Timothy, the God of the Blood Clan. Charlotte waited for a day, but Lady Southsilla did not launch an attack. He waited another day, but Lady Southsilla still did not make any move. On the third day, Charlotte could not help it and asked Aunt Karen to pass a message to Hughes. Hughes was very straightforward and agreed to meet immediately. Charlotte angrily accused, "How can you not keep your promise? I told you the big secret about Southsilla." Hughes smiled indifferently and replied, "Since it is a secret, let it be a secret forever. Jonathan raised me from childhood to adulthood, and I only recognize one Jonathan." Charlotte realized that she had made a fool of herself. The relationship between Hughes and Jonathan was too deep, and he did not want any real Jonathan at all. Moreover, he did not know that Hughes had made up his mind long ago. Since Charlotte wanted him to attack the city with 100 people, he would never do as Charlotte wished. No matter how exaggerated Charlotte's words were, he would never be fooled. Charlotte's performance made Xiuc more certain that he must have a big conspiracy. Charlotte was extremely frustrated. Just as she was about to tell Aunt Karen to end the meeting, she heard Xiuc say calmly, "If you are willing to duel with me 10 times, I will attack the city once." Charlotte couldn't help but curse secretly. Damn natives. Charlotte used Chinese, which Xiuc didn't understand, but it didn't affect him. He immediately raised the price, 20 duels. "I will attack the city once," Charlotte said unhappily. "Do you think I'm stupid? You just want to kill me 20 times, and you won't attack the city at all." Xiuc raised 3 fingers and said, "Timothy, the God of the Blood Clan, I promise the commander of Silver Pigeon Castle that if I duel with him 20 times, I will send 100 warriors to attack the city once. If you break your oath, I will never be able to avenge Jonathan." Charlotte took a deep breath. Timothy was the ancestor of the Abulahan clan and the evil god who created the first vampire knight's breathing method, the flesh furnace. His knight's spearmanship, the golden requiem, was once famous throughout the continent. Even in the human camp, there were people who admired this vampire knight. Zeus practiced the flesh furnace and the golden requiem. Although he was a human, he swore to Timothy, the ancestor of the Abulahan clan, that this oath would definitely come true. This oath was extremely serious and basically impossible to be violated. Charlotte hesitated for a moment and said, "I promise you." He also did not forget to tell Aunt Karen, "I have to trouble Aunt again." Aunt Karen smiled and said, "I also like it, watching young children duel lively in the dreamland. It's much better than dueling in the real world. No one will die, and it's not so cruel." Charlotte thought to herself, "That's right, anyway, I won't die, so it doesn't matter if I duel a few times." Zeus pointed the Black Knight's spear at the sky and shouted, "Fight!" "Coward!" Charlotte snorted coldly, and Blood Rose attacked, relying on speed to attack first. The first time the two fought in reality, they were at a disadvantage after only 7 or 8 moves. When Charlotte comprehended the third movement, Eternal Dawn, The two could fight more than 10 moves. Later, he made continuous breakthroughs and comprehended the wings of the young dragon. At that time, he forced Zeus back and shot away Jonathan. The two did not fight again that time. The second time they fought in the dream, Charlotte only resisted for 30 moves, and finally lost by 1 move, and was stabbed to death by Hughes. This time, Charlotte was shocked to find that Hughes' strength had improved by leaps and bounds in just a few days. He was at a disadvantage from the beginning, and was stabbed to death by a shot in the 20th move. More than 10 minutes later, Charlotte reappeared in the dreamland, and faced the fighting and murderous Hughes, and felt a little afraid. But thinking that he would not die, he urged the Blood Rose to attack again. This time he was defeated even more miserably, and he could not even hold on for 20 moves, and Hughes shot his feet and killed him with another shot. At this time, Hughes showed the style of a high-level knight, which was better than Hariadelva. Charlotte appeared in the dreamland again, and he forced himself to calm down, no longer risk attacking, and began to fight Hughes' moves. But this time, Xiuc's gun skills also changed. Each shot was faster than the last. After 12 shots, his momentum accumulated to the peak, and he shot Charlotte's head. The 4th battle, the 5th battle, the 6th battle. Charlotte's state was up and down, but her record was declining in waves. Even in the 10th dream duel, she couldn't even hold on for 10 moves. When Charlotte appeared in front of Xiuc for the 11th time, Xiuc held the gun and said, "This time, you can't even withstand 1 shot from me." Charlotte held the Blood Rose in front of him and whispered, "Yes, this time, there should be only 1 move." He jumped high. The anger brought by the continuous failure made him burst out with infinite potential. The Blood Rose turned into a flowing flame, and he no longer considered the tricks of countering each other, attacking and defending. Charlotte directly used the move that would hurt both sides. The 5th movement, Dragon's Breathing Fire. Blood Rose and Black Knight's spears crossed in the void, fighting for 37 times. Charlotte was hit by a spear and died in the dream again, but Charlotte also pierced his left eye with a sword before he died. As Xiuc said, Charlotte couldn't hold on this time. But Xiuc also died together under Charlotte's desperate counterattack. This was also the first time that Charlotte hurt Xiuc since the duel, and she directly killed this terrible enemy. In the dream, Aunt Karen created a comfortable chair and a small round table with a beautiful view, and placed exquisite snacks and afternoon tea. While enjoying the duel between the two young talents, she also enjoyed the scenery, which was very comfortable. Charlotte's sword was actually almost rogue. He didn't plan to live at the beginning, and deceived Xiuc. All the crazy attacks were to manipulate the blood flame and throw the Blood Rose. This battle was too calculated, but next time, Xiuc will be prepared, it won't work. Even so, Aunt Karen still looked up to Charlotte. She was able to constantly reflect on herself in battle and make changes to the enemy, proving that this young man was not a person who was rigid and bound by tradition. Not a bad kid, although his past history was a bit dark, he was able to correct his mistakes, was sincere to Anne, and had a promising future. Aunt Karen was willing to do a little for the two children. I don't know whether to say that Anne had a good vision, or that Anne was the person he was destined to meet, which made this young man desperately change. Charlotte and Hughes appeared in the dreamland together this time. Charlotte regained her confidence. Hughes' face was slightly solemn, but he still believed that the victory in the 12th duel belonged to him. Chapter 139, Older than Dauki. The Abulahum family is known as the first knight family of vampires. As one of the three royal families, the Asilo family ranks above the Abulahum family. The reason why it is not the first knight family is that the Asilo family has always been a more classical and now less popular swordsman family. The angel thorn practices the battle spirit that is more ancient than the fighting spirit. The fighting spirit comes from the surging vitality of the knight, and the battle spirit comes from the warrior's indomitable and unyielding fighting will. Charlotte cultivated the colorless blade not long ago, and has broken through the first level of battle spirit. At this time, he fully operated the Asilo family secret method, and a faint golden light shone on his body. It was not until this moment that he knew how talented the great human philosopher Protagoras, who created the bloody glory, was. Most of the secret methods of the blood clan only cultivate one bloody vortex. However, the bloody glory can cultivate up to 13 bloody vortices, and can also use the remaining bloody vortices to amplify the bloody glory and amplify 13 unique skills. The second advantage of Bloody Glory is that it can simulate the 13 clans of vampires, and even make the real vampires unable to see through their identities. If it weren't for the ability to hide his identity at will, Protagoras would not be able to wander around the vampire's territory and kill countless vampires no matter how powerful he is. He can disguise himself as a vampire at any time and mingle among them. Therefore, he has encountered dozens of sieges by high-level vampires and even saints in his life, and he has been safe and sound, and even killed the pursuers. Charlotte has always thought that Lord Leo was careless and that he handled it properly, so he could get away from the eyes of this high-level vampire. But at this moment, he has understood that the Bloody Glory created by Protagoras is indeed an unparalleled secret method and the nemesis of the vampires. He cultivated the Bloody Glory to the 6th level, and gradually transformed it into the starry battle spirit of the Asilo clan, and the pale golden light on his body also changed from weak to bright. In a one-on-one duel, Asilo's star fighting spirit is more effective than any other superpowers, and is more than one level stronger than the weak evil power of Bloody Glory. Xiuc was slightly surprised, but he didn't care at all, and said, "You actually deliberately held back in the previous battle. I will teach you today that in the fight between life and death, you can only go all out and can't hesitate at all." The Black Knight's spear turned into an endless gust of wind, stabbing Charlotte from all directions. Charlotte was like a pair of wings on her ribs, her body was extremely light, and her magic sword Blood Rose was even more changeable. She tried to keep a distance with each sword, and didn't fight Xiuc head-on, but occasionally counterattacked, and the pale golden sword light gathered by the colorless blade would burst out, equalizing the disadvantage of the short blade. The two fought for more than 20 rounds before Charlotte fell into disadvantage again. Zeus was always secretly puzzled in his heart. He couldn't understand how Charlotte, a low-level one, even a 6th-level extraordinary one, could fight with a high-level one like him with so many moves. He only felt that the opponent was extremely fast. Even faster than a high-level one like himself, and his natural sharp sense of combat could always detect the changes in his moves, predict in advance, and thus avoid the strongest part of each shot. Zeus thought to himself, "This guy is actually a fighting genius. It's a pity that the flesh and blood furnace I practiced is a secret method to temper the body. The several supernatural powers I practiced are also on the body. It's as if he knows that my body has been tempered 1,000 times. Every time he counterattacks, he attacks the eyes, nose, ears, mouth, and even the back." This cunning guy, Charlotte had tried his best at this time. He swung out several swords, trying to get rid of the entanglement and regroup, but Zeus's Black Knight spear entangled and wrapped him in the spear's force. With a backhand elbow, Charlotte's chest was deflated, and he died on the spot. 10 minutes later, Charlotte appeared in the dreamland again. He raised his hands and said, "Take a break." Zeus pondered for a moment and said, "Okay." Charlotte sat cross-legged on the ground and said, "Mammy, can you give us a barrel of beer? It will be better if it is chilled." Mammy Karen smiled and said, "In the dreamland, there's everything, but you can't bring out the dream." She didn't move a finger, and in front of the two young men who had a life and death feud, each of them had a barrel of ice-cold and refreshing beer. Even the logo on the barrel was from one of the most famous taverns in Silver Pigeon Castle. It was almost identical to the real beer, and there was no flaw. Charlotte opened the beer, took a big gulp, and felt refreshed all over. She shouted, "Dreamwalker is so convenient. It's a pity that I didn't choose Gorgias University." Zeus followed Charlotte's example, opened the beer, and drank it in big gulps. He said lightly, "Which university are you studying at in Bern?" Charlotte hesitated slightly, then replied, "I'm at Heidelberg University." Zeus nodded and replied, "It's indeed Heidelberg University funded by the Asilo family. I'm at the University of Tübingen, the family university of the Iblerhohen family, and Jonathan is also studying there." Charlotte couldn't continue this topic. He had just shot and killed Jonathan, the leader of the Yugoslav Restoration Army. Speaking of the person who raised him, Zeus could not help but talk endlessly, and regardless of whether Charlotte was a good listener or not, he continued, "Jonathan did not have any extraordinary talents. As a human, he suffered discrimination at the University of Byron, so he trained me since I was a child, learning the flesh furnace and the golden requiem, and waited until I was promoted to a formal knight before allowing me to study at the University of Tübingen. Jonathan repeatedly told me that I was only allowed to study at the University of Tübingen and not to become a vampire, You also know that vampires cannot reproduce and can only be transformed into new vampires through esoteric rituals or the first embrace. At that time, several barons were willing to develop me as their descendants, and a professor at the University of Tübingen was willing to provide me with a full set of esoteric rituals. But because of Jonathan's instructions, I still refused them all. Jonathan reminded me that I am a lady of Southera, not a baron. He thought that if I became a vampire, I would gradually forget that Southera wanted to restore its country. Actually, he's right. I also want to become an immortal. Human lifespan is too short. Charlotte just drank beer. He didn't know what to say, and he had no interest in talking. Hughes suddenly asked, "Why don't you want to become a vampire?" Charlotte wiped the wine stains from the corners of her mouth, thought for a while, and made up a lie, saying, "Because of love." Sister Karen covered her mouth, and she was overjoyed. As someone who had read all of Charlotte's investigation reports, Sister St. Karen certainly knew that Charlotte was talking nonsense. Did he not want to become a vampire? He cultivated bloody glory, and bloody glory didn't have that function. Chapter 140, Sunset Melting Gold. Hughes sighed and said, "I haven't dated a girl yet." He has spent his entire life preparing for the restoration of South Serafia, and almost all of his time has been spent on training. Otherwise, he wouldn't have become a high-ranking knight at such a young age. Where does he find the time to date a girl? Charlotte didn't dare to take up the topic. Charlotte Mecklen had dated many women. Even after traveling through time, he dated Anne frequently. He was afraid of irritating Hughes. Charlotte took another big sip of beer and said in a deep voice, "You killed so many people, don't you feel cruel?" Xiuc sneered and said, "Do you know how many ladies of Nansela died because of the betrayal of the behemoth people? 40%, fully 40%. How miserable the death of Lady Nansela is, how much price we want the behemoth people to pay. We are enemies who will never stop fighting. If I have a choice, I will slaughter all the behemoth people." Charlotte sighed and said nothing. When he was in college, he read some historical materials. The establishment of the Fars kingdom was stepping on countless corpses and setting off a bloody storm. Countless dead souls and bones forged the crown of the Fars empire. Charlotte is just a time traveler. He doesn't want to comment on such a complicated matter. Is it right for the behemoth people to betray Lady Nansela? Definitely not. Is it right for Lady Nansela to restore her country and destroy the Principality of Behemoth? There is only debate about this matter, no answer. If there is a choice, Charlotte does not want war in this world. Unfortunately, he has no choice. Hughes took a big gulp of wine, kicked the barrel away, and drank. "Keep fighting. One day, I will kill you as in a dream, and use the most severe punishment to make you pay for Jonathan's blood debt." Although Charlotte knew that her parents and brother were in the hands of Duchess Joseph, it did not stop him from saying, "Do you still remember the heads you showed me under the Silver Pigeon Castle?" Hughes said coldly, "If you have the opportunity to kill me, please don't show mercy. That is what I deserve." On the first day I stepped onto the battlefield, I realized that life and death are determined by fate. I can kill people, and others can kill me too. I will not complain if I die on the battlefield. For Yugoslavia, I am willing to dedicate everything. Life is just a trivial matter. Charlotte had nothing to say. He had lived in a peaceful era since he was a child. He had no common topics with Hughes, who had a blood feud since childhood, and it was impossible for them to have the same ideas. He put down the barrel and shook out a blood rose. Isilo's star-like fighting spirit burst out, and the swordlight flashed like a blazing sun. In this fight between the two, Charlotte only lasted for 28 moves before being shot dead by Zeus. The Black Knight's spear pierced her lower abdomen. Charlotte appeared again, and neither of them spoke, fighting in silence. In the 18th duel, Charlotte comprehended the 6th movement, Sunset Molten Gold, and the number of moves they fought increased to more than 30. In the 19th fight, Charlotte lasted for 31 moves. In the 20th fight, Charlotte lasted for 35 moves. The two had a tacit understanding and never appeared in the dreamland again. The next day, Zeus led his troops to attack the city as agreed. And the maze-like progress of Silver Pigeon Castle was reached, October 18th. A day later, when Charlotte and Hughes appeared in the dreamland again, Sister Karen even prepared some bread, barbecue, mushrooms, at least 3 kinds of fruit wine, and more than 10 barrels of beer produced by different taverns, making the duel feel like a high-end buffet, with food filling the long table. In the first duel, Charlotte lost miserably. After just one move, he was stabbed with 17 or 18 holes by Hughes's guns. He was lifted up in the air by Hughes like a rag bag and fell to the ground, dying in a very embarrassing way. Charlotte keenly discovered that Hughes' speed and gun speed had improved, so his proud light agility, spirit spider technique and young dragon wings were useless. Without the higher speed, he would lose so miserably. Charlotte had no good way to quickly turn the tide of the battle. He and Hughes dueled for 16 games, and each time he was killed by one move, without any chance of resistance. It was not until the 17th game that Charlotte won a turning point. His star fighting spirit sublimated in despair, broke through a thin barrier, and was promoted to the 7th level, becoming a mid-level extraordinary. With the strength of the 1st level and the all-round physical fitness, Charlotte resisted until the 7th move in this duel before losing. In the 18th duel, Charlotte mastered the new breakthrough power more skillfully, and once again resisted more than 10 moves under the violent golden requiem gun technique of Zeus. In the 19th duel, Charlotte supported 2 more moves. In the 20th duel, Charlotte was killed by Zeus's weird gun technique again. The next day, Zeus led his troops to attack the city again, and the maze progress of Silver Pigeon Castle reached, November 18th. Although Charlotte was stabbed to death by Zeus in the Dreamland 40 times in a row, she was still comforted to see the continuous maze of Silver Pigeon Castle. He watched the army of Hughes slowly retreat, but the diary in his arms conveyed a long-lost will. Charlotte Mecklenburg defeated Saint Vigo as the temporary commander of the Silver Pigeon Castle. After the labyrinth is transformed, she will receive a reward, the spiritual channel. She can send people and items with a lower level of transcendence than herself into Machupi or the labyrinth of the Silver Pigeon Castle. Charlotte's joy was really extraordinary. After the labyrinth of the Silver Pigeon Castle, he could not only roam freely between the 2 labyrinths, but also send transcendence and transcendent items with a lower level of transcendence than himself into the 2 labyrinths. It was really too convenient. After being happy for a long time, Charlotte discovered 2 bugs, that is, many of the transcendent items he had on hand were higher in level than himself, such as Dark Luxury and Floating World Flowers, which were both high-level transcendent wonders and could not be sent into the 2 labyrinths at all. There is another bug. He can only send things into the maze, but cannot take them out remotely. If he wants to take out the things sent into the maze, he can only go to Machupi or Fort de la Croix and move them physically. Although being able to send things into the 2 mazes is already quite convenient, with Charlotte's brain as a time traveler, he immediately thought of 70 or 80 methods that can be used. For example, he can transport food and crop seeds to Machupi, making it easier for the people who stay there to cultivate the land. He can also transport the beer from Fort de la Croix to Machupi, and then transport it from Machupi to Strasbourg, thereby earning a profit after saving most of the travel expenses. Despite this, there is still a little dissatisfaction. Charlotte sighed and thought to herself, this broken maze has a lot of bugs. Chapter 141 Everything is hazy. Aunt Karen sipped herbal tea and watched the 2 young men duel vigorously. This kind of duel in the Dreamland has been held more than 10 times, and each time it lasted for 20 rounds. Both Charlotte and Xiuc tacitly stopped mentioning how long the duel would last. During this period of time, the strength of the 2 was rapidly improving. Every time Xiuc's strength improved, he could kill Charlotte faster. Although Charlotte did not break through again and advance to the 8th level in just over 10 days, she comprehended the 7th movement of the 12 angel movements, everything is hazy. From this chapter, the star battle spirit changed from the scorching sun to darkness, and the edge was hidden, but it was more dangerous. Even Xiuc did not want to be hit by Charlotte's sword. Charlotte could not last more than 30 moves, and still lost 20 games in a row, but he was not discouraged. He saluted Aunt Karen respectfully and left the Dreamland. Xiuc always felt that Charlotte was a little strange, but he couldn't guess it, and he was too lazy to guess it. He also saluted to Sister Karen and returned to the South Seraph military camp. After the 2 young people left the Dreamland, Sister Karen stretched her back. When she was young, she liked to watch the fun. As she got older, she not only did not restrain herself, but became more and more interested in all kinds of interesting things. Charlotte and Xiuc each had their own plans. Generally, smart people can use wisdom to solve problems, so they are used to relying on their brains and will not work hard anymore. But these 2 young people are different. They will not relax their personal cultivation because of this. During this period of time, seeing the 2 people sharpen each other and use each other as a whetstone, Sister Karen only felt that this trip was too good. Otherwise, how could she see such an interesting young man? She patted lightly, and everything in the dreamland disappeared. Sister Karen stood on a mountain dozens of kilometers away from Silver Pigeon Castle, overlooking the city and the military camp of Lady South Seraph, who was threatening Silver Pigeon Castle. She had hunched that during this period, another saint-level extraordinary person had come to this military camp, but the other party tried his best to hide himself. It was obvious that he wanted to join forces with Saint Vigo to plot against her at a critical moment. But they could not imagine that the abilities of the Dreamwalkers were so wonderful and mysterious that Sister Karen had already pulled almost everyone's dreams into her own domain during this period. In other words, no one could hide their secrets in her eyes, whether it was Silver Pigeon Castle or Lady Nansula, except for the extraordinary people. The spirituality of the extraordinary people was higher than that of ordinary people. Unless they were in combat, Sister Karen was unwilling to pull the extraordinary people into her fantasy dream because it would cause a great burden and consume too much spirituality. Aunt Karen said to herself calmly, "Saints are not easy to come by. Madame Nansula has one saint, which is already rare. There is no way she can have another one. Another saint can only be obtained from Ron's blood clan. I just don't know which saint from the 31 clans it is." Aunt Karen was not afraid of being besieged by people of the same level. Dreamwalkers walk in dreams. They are not good at frontal combat, but they are extremely difficult to kill. After being promoted to saint, they will hardly appear in front of anyone. No one can find their true bodies. Every time they appear, they are phantoms in dreams. She did not think that the two saints could find her by joining forces. At this time, Zeus, who had awakened, reached out and grabbed his war spear. With a slight shake, the Black Knight's spear turned into countless spear shadows, but in the next second, it turned into Knight's spear again, pointing in the direction of Silver Pigeon Castle. He whispered, "I didn't expect that fighting with such a low-level extraordinary person could actually hone my skills. Although this guy is not strong enough, his fighting instincts are simply terrifying. It's a pity that the three superpowers I comprehended, whether it's flesh and blood reorganization, steel bones, or organ generation, all focus on tempering the body, allowing me to recover quickly no matter how serious the injury is, and my defense is stronger. I am not even afraid of enemies of a higher level, but I can't do anything to this slippery enemy. That guy seems to know my advantages and almost never exchanges injuries with me. Every counterattack is to kill me. This guy is really the most cunning person I have ever seen in my life. However, I have also made great progress. Next time we meet in reality, I will let you taste death." Zeus looked at the Silver Dove Castle from a distance and suddenly missed Charlotte. At this time, Charlotte also woke up in his bedroom. He stroked his left arm, suddenly laughed, and said to himself, "If I meet Zeus in reality, I will definitely take out all the guns and blow him to pieces. I don't believe he can withstand 1 magic-breaking armor-breaking bomb, 2 magic-breaking armor-breaking bombs, 10 magic-breaking armor-breaking bombs, but can he withstand 20 or 30? What's more, I have prepared 2 new things for him. I hope he will be happy when the time comes." In the past 10 days of fighting, Charlotte not only made rapid progress in swordsmanship, but also comprehended 2 secret methods of the Asilo family, called Fiery Eclipse and Dark Eclipse. Fiery Eclipse is a secret method that cooperates with the first 6 chapters of the 12 movements of angels. It can make the star battle spirit become strange and overbearing. Once it enters the enemy's body, it will be like an extremely fierce fire, constantly burning the enemy's vitality. The more you stimulate the fighting spirit, spiritual energy, and magic power to suppress it, it will be like pouring oil on the fire, which will only help the star battle spirit grow stronger. After the 12th movement of the angel, the dark eclipse broke through to the 7th chapter. Everything is hazy. The star battle energy turned from the scorching sun to darkness, and the edge was hidden. Only then could the secret method be used. It was more bizarre than the fierce eclipse. It was launched without any signs and hidden in the enemy's body. It could suddenly erupt after several days or even dozens of days. It was more vicious than the fierce eclipse. Whether it was the fierce eclipse or the dark eclipse, the star battle energy that entered the enemy's body would break out of the body when it approached the original owner, return to the owner's body, and carry a lot of vitality. The Asilo family was able to become one of the 3 royal families and dominate the old continent, not only because the blood swordsmen of this family had unpredictable swordsmanship with thunder and lightning, but also because the star battle energy had various supernatural powers, which was extremely difficult to resist in battle. However, the rapid progress of swordsmanship, the improvement of star battle energy, and the acquisition of the Asilo family's secret method, Fierce Eclipse and Dark Eclipse, were not as good as another gain, which made Charlotte happier. He left the bedroom and went to the terrace, looking out over the entire Silver Pigeon Castle, the bustling crowds in the city, the soldiers of the Knights of Favonius who were preparing for war, and the militia of the Silver Pigeon Castle, and suddenly he showed a smug smile. Charlotte was about to say something cool to liven up the atmosphere when she heard the door open. Belissa rushed in and shouted, "Mr. Charlotte Mecklen, I beg you, go and save Archduke Joseph. We have been delayed here for too long. I'm worried that the Archduke can't hold on any longer. The Principality of Behemoth cannot live without His Excellency the Duke." Although Belissa begged desperately, she was full of despair. The most beautiful maid beside the Duchess had been rejected by Charlotte countless times. She thought she would be rejected this time too, but unexpectedly, Charlotte smiled and replied, "Okay, we will set off tomorrow to the city of Interlaken." Chapter 142, Silver Pigeon Castle is completed as a maze. Belissa couldn't believe her ears and added, "Really?" Charlotte shrugged her shoulders and replied, "Of course it's true." Belissa jumped up excitedly and ran out in a hurry. After all, she was still a young girl, not a politician with a conspiracy. When she was happy, she couldn't hide it. Charlotte gently touched the diary in her arms, feeling very happy. 2 days ago, the Silver Pigeon Castle was completed as a maze, and he no longer needed to be trapped here. The Silver Pigeon Castle completed the maze, and Charlotte also got the reward she deserved. A secret passage was formed between Machupi and the Silver Pigeon Castle. This was not a passage in the real sense, but more like an overlap between the two cities. Any corner of Machupi may lead to the Silver Pigeon Castle, and the residents of the Silver Pigeon Castle may also walk to Machupi through any street. In the past few days, Charlotte has sent all of Baron Fell's property, including pure gold ecu, 4s banknotes, and extraordinary objects, to Machupi and hid them in the second maze. Without his guidance or permission, no one can find these riches. Even if you search every corner of Machupi, you can't find half a centime. As for Baron Fell's luxury goods, Charlotte did not move them to Machupi, because Machupi is, after all, an abandoned fortress of the ancient Or kingdom. The environment is too bad. These luxury goods are delicate. If they are moved there, they may be damaged by the harsh environment in a few days. At the same time, Charlotte also sent a batch of supplies to the troops left behind in Machupi. For him, Machupi may be the most important city in his heart, and it will be developed sooner or later. Charlotte has also tried the spiritual channel. It is indeed possible to send supplies and even life forms from the outside world into Machupi and Silver Pigeon Castle, but it can only be sent in one way and cannot be taken out again unless he returns to these two cities. Despite this, the mind channel is also a very important ability for Charlotte. He can buy various materials in Strasbourg and send them directly to Machupi without transportation. He can also buy various commercial products and send them directly to Silver Pigeon Castle, saving a lot of travel expenses. What makes him happiest is that after Silver Pigeon Castle completed the maze, there was an immediate prompt. Because there were too many NPCs, a second maze could be added. As long as he stayed in Silver Pigeon Castle for 18 days, Silver Pigeon Castle could also complete the double maze. However, Charlotte does not need to make Silver Pigeon Castle a double maze for the time being. He plans to stay in Silver Pigeon Castle for 18 days when he has time in the future to complete the second maze of the city. He has other things to do now. The reason why Charlotte agreed to Belissa to save Duke Joseph was of course not for the Duke, but because Sister Karen told him two things. Another Saint level came to the South Seraph Restoration Army. Although Sister Karen is not afraid of the two Saint levels joining forces, Charlotte does not plan to continue to defend Silver Pigeon Castle. He stayed here just to wait for the Labyrinth of Silver Pigeon Castle. Now that the Labyrinth of Silver Pigeon Castle has been completed, it would be meaningless to stay and defend the castle foolishly. Charlotte was not worried that Hughes would lead his troops to massacre the city after she left. If he left, he would have a way to lure Lady South Sarah out of the city before leaving. The second thing was that the reward for his command of the Knights of Favonius to defeat the Byron cavalry and annihilate a South Seraph army would arrive at Silver Pigeon Castle tomorrow. The Empire's process of calculating merits and awarding rewards was quite slow, so the reward for his first battle had arrived, but the reward for recapturing Silver Pigeon Castle, resisting the South Seraph Restoration Army's siege for nearly a month, killing the leader of the South Seraph Restoration Army, Jonathan, and frightening the South Seraph Saint Order, still needed to go through the process. Charlotte was a little helpless, but she could understand it. He was able to get the first reward during the war, instead of being promoted for merit a few years after the war, which was the result of the promotion of capable people. Although Sister Karen did not say it explicitly, Charlotte believed that the power of Count Brittany must be involved. Well, it may also be driven by Senior Sister Middleman. Although he was born in the Principality of Behemoth, he is now an authentic Farsian, and even works and lives in the capital Strasbourg. So Charlotte can refuse the Duke's messenger and does not care about the Duchess's maid, but he cannot refuse the messenger sent by the Empire to issue the reward. The other party will definitely ask him to rescue the Duke, and Charlotte can only go with the flow. Charlotte was on the terrace, blowing the wind for a while, and then another lady came to visit. When the orc lady Frederica saw Charlotte, she couldn't help but exclaimed, "How did you become so powerful again? You can become stronger by hiding in the bedroom every day. What kind of logic is this?" Charlotte dueled with Zeus in the dreamland every day, and her strength increased rapidly, causing him to become stronger after not appearing for a few days. It's no wonder that Frederica was amazed. Charlotte smiled and said, "If you want, you can also practice in the bedroom." Frederica showed a vigilant look and said, "Please don't think of hitting on me, I don't want to give up my career as a killer." Charlotte shrugged her shoulders and asked, "What do you want to see me for?" Frederica's expression was slightly dim, and she said, "You probably don't know yet, the orc tribes in the south of the continent have joined the Baron side. Now the Baron Empire, the Black Phoenix Dynasty, the orcs in the south, and the Southern Seraph have formed the New Order International Alliance to oppose the Fars Empire together. As an orc, I may not be able to stay in Fars, so I came to say goodbye to you in advance." Charlotte was also a little sad. Although the two of them had a life and death relationship when they first met, and even now they can't be said to be true friends, they fought side by side after all. He whispered, "I wish you a safe journey. Here are 28 as a personal gift from me." Frederica didn't say anything polite to Charlotte. After receiving the money, she turned around and left. Not long after, Dorothy came to visit. She and Charlotte were much closer. After all, they had a relationship with Menelman Sumini. The reason Dorothy came was that before Frederica left, she left her direct combat team to her. Dorothy came to ask how to deal with this matter. Charlotte did not hesitate and said, "I will expand the team again. You should take over Frederica's team first, and I will make arrangements later." This day passed uneventfully. Early the next morning, Charlotte did not wait for Hugh's siege. In fact, he did not need Hughes to attack the Silver Pigeon Castle, but he waited for a team from Strasbourg. What surprised Charlotte was that Louis Sami and Ross Budd were also in the team. He almost forgot about the two businessmen. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143 Baron Fabali. The team from Strasbourg was very impressive, with a night group of about 3,000 people, more than 2,000 entourages, at least 20 carriages, and a huge caravan. Looking down from the top of the city wall of the Silver Pigeon Castle, Charlotte could see the fluttering flags with golden tails that only royal in-laws were qualified to fly, as well as the family emblem representing the title. The person coming was a baron who is related to the royal family. Charlotte hesitated for a moment, opened the gate of the Silver Pigeon Castle, and brought everyone out to greet him. He did not want to create an unruly image, especially since Sister Karen had already informed him of the identity of the visitor. The Silver Pigeon Castle was a baron's territory, and it was impossible for it to be handed over to a fourth-level clerk of the 30th or 40th rank. After a complex political struggle within the empire, the emperor's brother-in-law, Baron Fabali, was canonized in the Silver Pigeon Castle. The emperor's brother-in-law came to take over his own territory. Charlotte had arranged everything long ago. The Silver Pigeon Castle had been turned into a maze. He had also transferred all the property and even made preparations. So when he went out to greet Baron Fabali, he was smiling and his attitude was humble and gentle. Baron Fabali was a middle-aged fat man in his 40s. When he saw Charlotte, he rarely reached out from the carriage and waved. He just passed the Knights of Favonius and the militia of Silver Pigeon Castle, who were waiting for him, and went directly into the city. Baron Fabali's attitude was the arrogance unique to the nobles. For him, waving at Charlotte was already a great gift from heaven, and this was also because he recaptured Silver Pigeon Castle. After all, this was now his territory. Charlotte didn't care. He knew that nobles were like this. Anyway, when they died, their blood was red. But the knights of Favonius and the militia of Silver Pigeon Castle were full of anger. Charlotte was their idol. During this period, Charlotte's performance conquered everyone. He can arrange everything fairly. He can charge into battle and kill the leader of Lady Nansula. He can distribute land and give gold écus to every soldier who died in the battle. He can promote every soldier who performs well, never be arrogant to others. He shares the joys and sorrows with his soldiers, and always stands at the forefront of the war. Well, the basic operation of a time traveler. Anyway, the land belongs to Baron File, and the pension is also the property of the Baron. How much money does Charlotte have? When Charlotte got the tip-off from Aunt Karen, she had a bold idea. At this time, seeing the team, the carriages full of people, and the entourage dressed in gorgeous clothes, her heart was filled with surging. Baron Feebly's property may not be as good as Baron Fila's. After all, he didn't have any territory before, but he must build. This is all my property. If things are often lost in his pigeon castle in the future, you can't blame me. They are great nobles, and they don't care about losing a few worthless things. After the Silver Pigeon Castle was completely turned into a maze, Baron Feebly didn't know that his things might be in good condition, but they disappeared and went to the Machupi fortress hundreds of kilometers away. Well, this is very Charlotte. Charlotte suddenly caught up with the Baron's carriage and said in a low voice, "The army of South Seraph is still nearby. Baron, you are worth 1,000,000 gold écus, so you can't take risks easily. Please enter your loyal Silver Pigeon Castle as soon as possible and move into your palace. I will swear to guard the rear of your team." Although Baron Feebly didn't look down on a fourth-level clerk from a civilian background, Charlotte's words were really comforting. What is a body worth 1,000,000 gold écus? He is indeed a big shot, a super noble of the empire, completely different from those commoners. Facing Charlotte's flattery, the Baron said lightly, "Those ladies of South Sela will never come to Silver Pigeon Castle again." He added an explanation with a little pride. Before leaving, His Majesty the Emperor asked the Grand Priest Ox Rating to accompany me. How could those stray dogs dare to come under the holy rank? Charlotte thought to herself, South Sela also has the holy rank, but he would not say this, but said in an envious tone, Baron Fabali is indeed different from other barons. This sentence made Baron Fabali feel refreshed. Before he came to Silver Pigeon Castle, he wanted to embarrass Charlotte, and he also had another responsibility, to thoroughly investigate the truth of the death of Baroness Fell and her family. He always felt that the truth was not important, and it was important to let Charlotte know who was the owner of Silver Pigeon Castle. But Charlotte's performance made him think that Charlotte's report was the truth. Who the hell cares how Baron Fell's family died? If their whole family didn't die, how could there be Baron Fabali of Silver Pigeon Castle? He deliberately stuck out his fat face and smiled at Charlotte, thinking that he had given the greatest favor. Charlotte didn't continue to follow him. If he continued to perform, she would be vomiting soon. If it weren't for the fact that this baron brought a large amount of wealth and was his walking treasure house, he would have directly rewarded him with a magic-breaking armor-breaking balm. Anyway, Hokuir Silver Rhino shot Archduke Ferdinand and shot the last prince of South Slav, Jonathan, so it wouldn't matter if he killed one more brother-in-law of Axel VI. Soon a carriage full of sacred meaning passed by Charlotte. An elderly man leaned out and said with a smile, "Congratulations, Mr. Charlotte Mecklin." Charlotte knew that this must be the Grand Priest Augustin, and said hurriedly, "I have also arranged accommodation for you, Grand Priest. All the arrangements are in accordance with the glorious temple in Strasbourg. It's just that time is tight, so there must be some inadequacies in the arrangements." Grand Priest Augustin nodded. Charlotte gave a hint, knowing that he was coming. What did this mean? The Grand Priest knew it very well. He was full of curiosity about Charlotte and said, "Please arrange a guard for me, a young and beautiful virgin." Charlotte immediately thought of Dubin, but quickly destroyed the idea. Dubin could not meet the needs of the Grand Priest. But Ziusi can. Madame Nansula did not attack as expected, and when the convoy entered the Silver Pigeon Castle, Baron Feebly did not go to the castle. Instead, he stood on the top of the city, overlooking his own city. He was extremely excited and muttered to himself, in the future of the Silver Pigeon Castle, if I make everyone cry, no one should laugh. If I make everyone laugh, even if their whole family dies, they will laugh like pigs. I, Baron Feebly, am about to become the owner of the Silver Pigeon Castle. Charlotte muttered in her heart, no, You are about to become the NPC of the Silver Pigeon Castle, huh? His Excellency the High Priest failed to transform? It seems that this broken maze cannot be transformed into the holy level. The High Priest seemed to have realized something. When he looked at the mountain in the distance where Aunt Karen was drinking tea, he showed a look of realization. Chapter 144 A Private Night Order of no more than 5 people. Baron Feebly was very satisfied with Charlotte's attitude and decided not to control him. He announced on the top of the city, Mr. Charlotte Mecklen, you have fought for the Empire and made great contributions. You are promoted to the 32nd level, 2nd level General Affairs. His Majesty the Emperor has specially allowed you to form a private night group of no more than 5 people. The registration period is the moment you die. Charlotte smiled slightly, performed an imperial salute, and took the document handed over by Baron Feebly. He didn't care much about his promotion again. As long as no one made trouble, his promotion would be a natural result. However, he was very surprised and quite happy to be allowed to form a private night group of no more than 5 people. Only those with a professional level of 24 or above are qualified to have a private night group. This kind of private night group is not a formal night group raised by a great noble, but a private assistant hired by the Empire for meritorious officials. Charlotte is only a 32nd level, 2nd level General Affairs, and is not qualified to have a private night group, so he needs His Majesty the Emperor to grant him grace. When one reaches the 24th grade or above, commonly known as the insurmountable class, the salary will be locked, and no matter how one is promoted, there will be no further salary increase. This is portrayed as clean in the Empire, and the dignitaries have the same income as ordinary civil servants, but in fact, the income of positions above the 24th grade is not linked to salary. For example, the dignitaries who own private knights have the same salary as their masters, but it will be paid directly to the masters. No one will give all the money that the Empire gives to private knights to their own knights. Most of it will be withheld for themselves, and only a small reward will be given to the private knights. In other words, it is a disguised way to increase income. The first thing Charlotte thought of was the 3 clever kittens she raised. It was time to give them a knighthood. How much money can you make from raising a cat? To raise a living person, even at the minimum wage, it would cost dozens of centimes. Baron Feebly was very satisfied and said, His Majesty the Emperor asked me to tell you that you should go to the front line. Don't stay in Silver Pigeon Castle any longer. Leave this place to me. This was the Baron's selfish desire. He wanted to take charge of Silver Pigeon Castle, and of course he didn't want a night group to stay in his territory. Charlotte didn't hesitate at all and said, I'll leave now. Elissa had been urging him for many days, and he didn't want to arrange a young and beautiful virgin for the Grand Priest Augsreden. It was the right thing to do to leave this place of trouble as soon as possible. The Baron was very satisfied with Charlotte's tactfulness and said, Since Mr. Charlotte Mecklen is anxious to go to the front line, I won't keep you. The Queen has also heard of your reputation, so she gave you a manor. Here is the deed. In the Fars Empire, it has become a custom for the entire empire to promote positions in the central office, the Emperor to reward honors, and the Queen to give wealth. If Charlotte didn't know what to do, Baron Feebly wouldn't be afraid of deducting his manor. As for the Queen, what a joke, the Queen is his sister. Charlotte promised to leave the Silver Pigeon Castle immediately, and he was happy for once. Charlotte really kept her promise and immediately ordered to set off, taking the Knights of Favonius and the Silver Pigeon Castle militia with him. They didn't even take any baggage with them. After all, everything that could be carried away had already been sent to Machupi, so there was no need to deliberately stand out in front of the Baron. After sending Charlotte away, Baron Feebly rubbed his hands, screamed excitedly, and went straight to the Pigeon Castle. He wanted to check how much property the previous Baron File had left. Although he heard that the Silver Pigeon Castle had been robbed once, the robbery could only carry away the floating wealth. Could it also carry away the shops and land? Every great noble is a big landlord and the largest real estate owner in the local area. Baron Feebly's spending is far more than that of ordinary nobles, and he also hopes to make up for some of the deficit. The noble's money is not endless. There are many nobles who owe huge debts. Butler Dart held the account book in his hand and wiped his sweat. When he heard Baron Feebly entered the Pigeon Castle, he led a group of servants to greet him. The first thing Baron Feebly asked was, how much cash is left in Pigeon Castle? Butler Dart said tremblingly, not a centime left. All of them were taken away by the damned Lady Nansula. Baron Feebly had been prepared. Although he felt sorry, he could still accept it. He asked again, "The magic items, luxury goods, carriages, and decorations in Pigeon Castle," Butler Dart replied in a low voice, "In the entire castle, only the house is still there. Even the furniture is gone. All of them were taken away by the damned Lady Nansula." Baron Febily could not help but marvel. He walked around the Pigeon Castle and found that everything was empty, not even the candlesticks were left. He could only ask one last question, "Bring out all the deeds of Baron Fila." Butler Dart's heart was lifted up. He had been thrown to Machupi by Charlotte several times, and he had specially trained how to deal with this scene, but his heart still couldn't bear it. He said carefully, "Here is the account book." After saying this, Butler Dart's whole body was soaked with sweat. It was fear, panic, and facing death with indifference. "Anyway, it's like this. Even if I am hanged by the Baron, those properties are gone. They have all been taken away by the damned Lady Nansula." Butler Dart thought secretly, "The Baron can only kill me in anger, which is better than falling into the hands of Mr. Mecklen, and being in a dilemma between life and death." Baron Febily took over the account book and saw mortgages, remortgages, loans, and more écus. The entire account showed 2 words, "No money." After Charlotte moved into Pigeon Castle, she burned all the documents and forged a whole set of documents. She mortgaged all of Baron Fila's farms, shops, houses, manors and other real estates. He even mortgaged Pigeon Castle for tens of thousands of écus. Of course, the money obtained from the mortgage all went to the damned Lady Nansula and was robbed. Although Charlotte was a math teacher and not a proper accountant, she still did a very good job on the books. It was not impossible for an experienced accountant to not notice the flaws. In the old world, there was no such profession as accounting. And even many financial expertise had not appeared. Usually, the nobles used butlers to manage their wealth. The general math level of butlers was only addition and subtraction, and multiplication and division were difficult for them. The accounting methods and knowledge system were quite backward. He had several centuries of knowledge to crush the natives of the old world with these tricks. Baron Febily's eyes darkened. He really didn't expect that Baron Fila would actually leave him such a mess. Not only did he not have any wealthy property to fill the financial hole, but he also had a huge debt. Febily was so angry that he threw the account book and cursed, "Baron Fila. He is nothing. How could he run a wealthy city like Silver Pigeon Castle like this? The annual taxes alone are enough for him to live a life of luxury, so how could he owe such a large sum of money? Damn Madame Nansula. They are robbers, real robbers." Louis Samy and Rosbad did not follow Baron Febily into the city, but followed Charlotte out of Silver Pigeon Castle. Both of them were a little nervous. Chapter 145, First Tax Day. Charlotte gave Louis Samy 50 luxury items and Rosbader 35 luxury items, asking them to exchange them for cash and use the cash to hire a group of detectives and adventurers. Now that Charlotte's battle in Silver Pigeon Castle is over, the two have not hired detectives and adventurers yet. This matter will definitely not be explained. As for swallowing the money, no matter how brave they are, they dare not do it. Charlotte died in Silver Pigeon Castle, and the two were naturally not afraid, but Charlotte not only did not die in the battle, but also promoted to the second-level general affairs of the 32nd rank, and was the real power in charge of the patrol army and the knights. Although he was a low-level noble, it was easy for him to kill the two businessmen. The first-level general affairs of the 33rd rank is the same level as the 5th-level clerk, but the 33rd rank is the ceiling of the clerk, but it is only the starting line of the general affairs. As a low-level noble, the clerk has a certain probability of getting a political identity and managing specific affairs. The general affairs will definitely have a political identity and enter the sequence of managers of the empire. Louis Smith was much more courageous after all. After leaving the Silver Pigeon Castle, he came to Charlotte and whispered, "I bought a detective agency for you. They are not doing well, but they are well staffed. I thought it would be more convenient to have a detective agency of my own than to hire a detective. The formalities were too slow, so it took a little time." Charlotte smiled and agreed with this reason. The batch of luxury goods he gave should be able to buy a medium-sized detective agency, but a detective agency cannot be bought just by buying it. Louis Smith must have used all his tricks. There is no need to treat businessmen with a friend. Charlotte did not feel betrayed by Louis Smith. He just wanted to get back enough profits. Rosbud was full of bitterness. He did weigh the interests. After returning to Strasbourg, he learned that Charlotte had killed Jonathan, the leader of the South Seraph rebels outside the Silver Pigeon Castle. Lady South Seraph even sent a saint to take revenge. He believed that Charlotte would not survive, so he did nothing. When he learned that Charlotte not only defeated the South Seraph Restoration Army repeatedly, but also drove away the South Seraph saint-level strongman, Ross Bader's eyes went dark because he knew that he had made a wrong investment. He didn't know why Charlotte could drive away the saint-level strongman, but he knew that when he left Silver Pigeon Castle, it would be the day when the Bader Chamber of Commerce would perish. Ross Bader chose to abandon all business partners, sold all the real estate under the family, and let the whole family take all the property they could take away to the Ingram Empire. He came to see Charlotte alone. When he saw that Charlotte easily forgave Louis Simi, he knew that he had made a wrong choice again. Charlotte ignored the merchant, but during the first break, she called Belissa and her guards over and said gently, "We are about to go to the front line, but Miss Belissa, you need to report to the Duchess, so we have to separate." Belissa hesitated. Although she also wanted to go to Interlaken, Charlotte's words made sense. In the end, she agreed and said, "My Lord Duke, I'll leave it to you." Charlotte nodded. After sending Belissa away, he did not continue to march, but started another round of reorganization. This time, he expanded his own, Dorothy, Yellow Bear, and Doberman's direct combat team to 500 people. The direct combat team of Gwen the Spotted Deer and Bancroft the Wind Wolf remained at a scale of 200 people. The militia of Silver Pigeon Castle that was swept out was dispersed and integrated into the Knights of Favonius. The Knights of Favonius suddenly became a huge knightly order of more than 13,000 people. Although the quality of this knightly order could not be compared with that of a proper knightly order, and its composition was too complicated, it had experienced several battles and had a certain degree of discipline. Then, Charlotte led this army straight to Machupi. As for Duke Joseph, screw him. It took Baron Febeli a full 7 or 8 days to recover and no longer be listless. He had gone to great lengths to get the Silver Pigeon Castle, but he didn't get any benefits. Those damned ladies of Nansela didn't even leave him a centime, and robbed Baron Fila's wealth very thoroughly. This fact once made him very depressed. The opportunity for Baron Febeli to recover was the first tax day of the Silver Pigeon Castle after his arrival. When Charlotte was at the Silver Pigeon Castle, she didn't collect taxes at all. Baron Febeli's first tax collection caused complaints and even conflicts with local residents, but he had a direct knight order, so the residents of Silver Pigeon Castle dared not speak out. He showed off his power in Silver Pigeon Castle in the afternoon, and when he returned to Pigeon Castle, he couldn't help but look at his vault, which was also Baron Phyllis' former vault, but before he arrived at Pigeon Castle, it had been emptied, not even a mouse, it was completely empty. After passing through many guards, Baron Febeli stepped into his vault. When he was about to count the taxes collected today, his eyes widened with unprecedented hugeness. He rubbed his eyes repeatedly, but still didn't see anything. The vault was just like the day he first arrived, not even a mouse, it was completely empty. Where are my gold écus? Where are my taxes? Where are my original deposits, my money? Baron Febeli let out a sharp howl, like a wounded wild dog, or a wild cat that failed to mate, so miserable that people wanted to kick him to death. A few minutes later, the extremely angry Baron Febeli saw a line of words carved on the wall with a sharp blade: "All your wealth, we, the people of South Slavia, have taken it." There was also a signature below: Zeus, the temporary commander of the South Slavia Restoration Army. These signatures were written in a flamboyant style, which showed how proud the person who wrote these words was. Baron Febeli's hands were shaking with anger. He left Strasbourg and came to the Silver Pigeon Castle. He thought he would live a prosperous life in this wealthy territory, so he brought all his life savings with him. It was a huge amount of money. The Baron was so distressed that he dared to duel with the Saint Order. When pushed to the limit, humans can do anything. Even challenging a dragon. Febeli suddenly burst into tears, punched and kicked the wall, crying and cursing, "Zis, you will die. Zis, you took my money, how could you take all my money and leave not a centime? Zis, if I catch you, I will send you to the High Priest Oxredin. I will let the High Priest Oxredin punish you severely. How can someone be so cruel to take away all my savings, my money? Damn Madame Nansela. They are robbers, real robbers." Baron Febeli had only one thought in his mind at this time: Madame Nansela and I have an irreconcilable hatred. The hatred between me and Zis will never end. Chapter 146 New Order Alliance of Nations. The government departments of the Fars Empire pay salaries every Monday, so in the Fars Empire, Monday is affectionately called by all workers as the Empire Payday. Most lords in the Fars Empire collect taxes on Tuesday, so Tuesday is affectionately called by all taxpayers as the Lord's Tax Day. The person who created the tragedy of Baron Febeli's Empire Tax Day was Charlotte, who was repairing the knights in Machupi. He led a whole group of knights into Machupi, and the diary immediately sent a ray of thought, telling him that he could carry out the third maze. Charlotte didn't want to go to the front line to fight for an imperial duke who didn't know him at all, so he simply repaired in Machupi. The Knights of Favonius originally needed training in chicken soup. Now that there is a secret passage between Machupi and Silver Pigeon Castle, Charlotte no longer has to worry about supplies. He can get food directly from Silver Pigeon Castle. As long as the food is placed in a designated place in Silver Pigeon Castle, he can appear in Machupi in the next second. The Silver Pigeon Castle itself is a commercial city with rivers crisscrossing, which means that the business is developed and there is no shortage of food. Although the Machupi fortress has been abandoned for a long time, some houses have been renovated and are still quite good to live in. After the Knights of Favonius moved in, the fortress gradually became lively. Charlotte also occasionally sent people to the Silver Pigeon Castle to buy beer. When the buyers saw Baron Fibberley leading the knights to collect taxes, they remembered that they still had a fortune that they had not taken back. When Baron Fibberley looked at his empty vault, Charlotte was also looking at her vault that was dazzled by the gold écu. Dozens of boxes filled with gold écu were divided into two rows. Some were the property of Baron Filler and some were the property of Baron Fibberley. Charlotte couldn't tell the source of each gold écu, but, was it important? It didn't matter. The important thing was that these gold écu belonged entirely to him, Charlotte Mecklen. This amount of gold écu was more than 100,000, or to be more precise, about 120,000 écu. This was the joint contribution of the two barons, and also their entire gold hoard. In addition to these gold coins, he also had a sum of furs banknotes, of which more than 10,000 came from Baron Filler, and the remaining more than 30,000 came from Baron Febeli. Baron Filler was fine, after all, he was dead and no longer needed this money. Without this cash flow, Baron Febeli would probably only have debts. This money was actually a loan that Baron Febeli got by mortgaging the tax collection rights of the Silver Pigeon Castle. He spent too much and had no cash balance. Charlotte counted these gold écu and furs banknotes over and over again, and she was a little addicted to this game. The happiest game in the world is to count the unexpected windfall. Every time you count, happiness increases by 1 point. Although wealth will not increase no matter how many times you count, the secretion of dopamine will continue to provide happiness honestly. Charlotte grabbed a handful of gold écu and let them fall again. Suddenly, she remembered that Baron Febeli had some expensive private collections. Just when she wanted to go back to the Silver Pigeon Castle, she thought to herself, forget it. I'm afraid the excitement is too great and the Baron can't stand it. Well, what if Baron Febeli can't stand the excitement and has a heart attack and dies on the spot? Wouldn't it be great if the Empire sent another richer Baron? Thinking of this, Charlotte was about to work tirelessly, but she sensed that someone had invaded the maze, not the Silver Pigeon Castle, but Machupi. She was shocked and hurriedly left her vault. A team of orcs broke into Machupi. Some of them immediately felt that something was wrong with the ruins of the fortress of the ancient Orc Kingdom and were about to withdraw from Machupi. If Charlotte came out later and no one activated the maze, these orcs might really have escaped from the maze. Charlotte made a big grab, and the orc team changed direction unconsciously under the confusion of the building. Charlotte and Frederica had been colleagues for a while and learned about some of the orcs. The southern continent is a relatively chaotic place. Several major powers have spheres of influence there, but no one can completely control the southern continent. There are nearly 1,000 orc tribes in the southern continent. Some tribes have formed alliances, some tribes have their own territory, some tribes have fought against each other, and even have feuds, but no matter which tribe it is, they all hate the Sherlock dynasty without exception. After the demise of the Sherlock dynasty, the orc tribes in the southern continent turned to hate the Fars Empire. Although it was Fars that destroyed Sherlock, who made Fars inherit the land and people of the Sherlock dynasty? So this time, the orc tribes in the south of the continent joined the New Order Accord International Alliance formed by Byron, the Black Phoenix dynasty, and the Southern Seraph. This is an orc team performing a special mission. They are from the Overback Red Bear tribe. The orcs of this tribe are half human and half bear. They are extremely strong, with black or brown hard hair all over their bodies, but their backs are flaming red, So they are called the Overback Red Bear Tribe. Their missions may be to detect intelligence or to assassinate the leader. Charlotte tracked this group of orcs and was about to separate them and ask one of them what they were doing. If it had nothing to do with him, he could just let them go. Although it was a war stage, Charlotte still had some resistance to killing. He waited patiently for a while, but found that this group of orcs was experienced and did not panic because of the changes in the maze. They had always kept the team intact. Charlotte thought to himself, since we can't separate them, why not just ask them directly? He had dueled with Fuse hundreds of times. Although the best result was to die together, he had also tempered his fighting spirit. He was not afraid of a small group of orcs trapped in the maze of Machupi. He showed up and shouted, "What are you orcs doing in Machupi?" He was answered by a meteor hammer as big as a human head. Charlotte relied on his agility to turn around and dodge the hammer, but the overbacked red bear warrior who attacked him used a pair of meteor hammers with countless spikes in both hands, which were used like lightning and thunder, and he chased Charlotte continuously, hammering at Charlotte's face. Charlotte didn't expect to meet such a master. The overbacked red bear warrior who attacked was at least a mid to high level 1 in terms of hammer skills, and might even be a knight of level 10 or above. The meteor hammer was a heavy weapon, and was swung away by the overback red bear warrior. The hammer was heavy and unstoppable. Charlotte did not dare to use the magic sword to block it. She could only rely on her body skills and kept jumping and dodging the meteor hammer. At the same time, she shouted again, "If you don't explain your intentions as soon as possible, I will not be polite." The overback red bear warrior wielding the meteor hammer shouted, "We are here to assassinate Archduke Ferdinand. Since you have discovered us, we cannot allow you to leave alive." Chapter 147. We don't know the characters of the Fars Empire. Let's not read the newspaper. When Charlotte heard this reason, she almost fell off the wall and could not help shouting, "Don't you read the newspapers in Fars?" The overback red bear warrior who wielded the meteor hammer said in a muffled voice, "We don't know the characters of the Fars Empire, let alone read the newspapers, human." Die, he flipped his hands, and the meteor hammer suddenly became twice as fast. The two hammers swung out like lightning, exploding the air and creating a thunderous sound. Charlotte took a deep breath and shouted, "Archduke Ferdinand has been assassinated. The Principality of Behemoth has declared war on the territory of South Seraph, and Byron has also declared war on the Principality of Behemoth. Several major empires have already started fighting. Why are you here now?" The overback red bear warrior who wielded the meteor hammer was shocked. He pulled the meteor hammer back with both hands and shouted, "Human, are you lying to us?" Charlotte did not expect that the battle had come to this point. The three major empires of Fars, Byron, and the Black Phoenix dynasty had announced their participation in the war. Byron, the Black Phoenix dynasty, the orc tribes in the south of the continent, and the territory of South Seraph had already signed the Treaty of the International Alliance of the New Order Agreement, but there were still assassins who arrived at the scene at a late stage. Charlotte spread her hands and said, "Archduke Joseph has already succeeded to the throne. He is leading the army of the Principality of Behemoth and is currently fighting the Yugoslav Restoration Army. What orders did you receive that you have only arrived at Machupi now?" Archduke Ferdinand has been buried for a long time. A dozen or so cross-backed red bear warriors immediately started shouting, "The funeral has been held? We are really late? We haven't taken action yet. How did Ferdinand die? I don't believe it. This human is lying." Charlotte looked at these cross-backed red bear warriors. They seemed to regret not being able to have the feast, and did not seem to care much about the failure of the mission. She explained to them a few more sentences. Archduke Ferdinand and his wife were killed by Yugoslav assassins using extraordinary guns. Yes, they were killed on the spot, and afterwards there were assassins who tried to attack their coffins. If you don't believe me, I can take you to Archduke Ferdinand's Fort Mostar, or Strasbourg. When Charlotte said this, she was also sweating. This was the assassin who wanted to assassinate Archduke Ferdinand. Sending him to Strasbourg or Mostar Castle would definitely be a great achievement. Although this achievement was not as great as his defeat of the Baron Cavalry and recapture of Silver Pigeon Castle, it was not too small, enough to be promoted to a higher position. The Red Bear warrior who had just used the meteor hammer to fight Charlotte stood up and said, the Big Bear, don't believe you. We have to verify the truth ourselves." Charlotte scratched her ears and said, "You can believe me. We are allies. I'm not a human. I'm a baron." "Well, Although more than 99% of the Baron people are humans, Charlotte believes that this group of Red Bear warriors will definitely not be able to find any grammatical errors. They are not online readers who enjoy picking out typos and grammatical errors from authors. As Charlotte expected. When these overback Red Bear warriors heard that he was a Baron, their attitude softened. The overback Red Bear warrior Dazai who wielded the meteor hammer said, "Show us the evidence." Charlotte circulated the star battle energy and with a casual wave of her hand, a piece of stone on the wall was cut in half. The cut surface was as smooth as a mirror. It was the secret technique of the Asilo family, the colorless blade. Big Bear Tyrant nodded slightly. Bloody glory could conceal even the real vampires, let alone this group of orcs. He immediately believed what Charlotte said and shouted, "I believe you. However, I just believe that you are a Baron. As for the matter of Archduke Ferdinand, we have to verify it ourselves." Charlotte shouted, "I can lead the way." Big Bear Tyrant nodded slightly and replied, "Okay. I don't know your name yet, Baron." Charlotte answered without hesitation, "Jin Nan. My name is Jin Nan. My ancestors also have orc blood, but it is too thin, and I can't practice the orcs' fighting spirit." This sentence made this group of overback Red Bear warriors very fond of them. A middle-aged looking, burly warrior with a height of more than 3.5 meters and a body of animal skin armor walked out and said, "I am their captain. You can call me the 100 Bears. When I was born, my mother dreamed of the eternal and illusory dragon. I was destined to be the leader of the 100 Bears, so she gave me this name." Charlotte thought to herself, "Your mother bear probably doesn't know how to count. She dreamed of the eternal and illusory dragon, one of the 9 true gods. Why shouldn't she be called the chief of 10,000 bears? Why the chief of 100 bears?" The chief of 100 bears growled and said, "Strasbourg is too dangerous, and orcs are not welcome there. We won't go there. You take us to Fort Mostar. I want to see Ferdinand's body with my own eyes." Charlotte thought to herself, "Why do you still want to dig graves? The bodies of Archduke Ferdinand and his wife have been buried, according to normal thinking. To find out whether Archduke Ferdinand and his wife were assassinated, you only need to get a few newspapers, but these crossback Red Bear warriors can't read and are stubborn. If there is a smart one among the dozen bears, they wouldn't have arrived at Machupi at this time." Charlotte didn't think she could persuade these crossback Red Bear warriors. Anyway, getting these bears to Fort Mostar must be a great achievement. Who cares if the reason for going there is a bit ridiculous? Of course, Charlotte couldn't go right away. He had to wait until the Machupi triple labyrinth was completed. Charlotte gave this group of overbacked Red Bear warriors the reason. Now the Principality of Behemoth and the territory of South Seraph are at war. We may have to cross the front line to go to Mostar Castle. Although I know you are not afraid of war, this meaningless war should be avoided if possible. Besides, you are too bear-like. I need to order a batch of disguises for you. You can completely disguise yourself as demon hunters. This way you can move around freely in Fars." After listening to it, both the 100 Bears and the Big Bear Tyrant felt that Charlotte's deception made sense. It really made sense. They set out from the south of the continent and experienced countless hardships along the way. Although they were not afraid of fighting, it was difficult to even find someone to inquire about the road. I don't know how many wrong roads they took and how many northwest winds they had to endure. It was really a bit difficult. It would be great for this group of bears to have a Baron to help them with logistics. Charlotte had thought about whether to kill these bears. But he recently found that his practice had reached a bottleneck. After facing the evil god 2 or 3 times, his spirituality had improved. After he was promoted to the 7th level and became a mid-level extraordinary person, his practice speed had not increased much. His practice speed had returned to the normal range, that is, the level of an ordinary genius. Chapter 148 Blood Clan and Orcs. Whether it is a genuine vampire or a human who practices bloody glory, low and middle levels can improve their strength by devouring the vitality of others, but if a vampire wants to advance to a higher level, it can only advance by condensing blood cores. The blood clans are born with different body structures. Although they can also practice the secrets of other clans across surnames, the speed of practice is bound to be not as fast as practicing the secrets of their own clan. Therefore, although there are vampires who practice different blood-sucking secrets, they are all non-mainstream. Most vampires can only condense a bloody vortex. Like human knights, they are determined by the strength of blood energy. It is not like the bloody glory created by Protagoras, where each bloody vortex can be opened to advance once. The promotion of vampires to higher level is very simple in terms of form. As long as the bloody vortex is compressed, condensed, and refined into blood core, they can be promoted to higher level. The blood clan divides the high level into 2 stages. The 13th to 15th levels are called barons, and the 16th to 18th levels are called viscounts. Byron really grants titles to the high-ranking members of his clan. It is a tradition of the vampire empire that no one who does not enter the high-ranking position will not be awarded. After being promoted to the high-ranking position, the vampires pay more attention to the purity of blood energy. They will no longer devour prey with a lower level of extraordinary than themselves at will. They will only replenish it occasionally, like dessert after a meal. The unrestrained and crazy devouring of vitality can easily make them degenerate into monsters. The reason why the vampires are also nicknamed vampires is because they can really degenerate into inhuman monsters, lose their human form, and lose all reason. There is a saying, vampires who can think and talk and laugh like humans are actually not the complete version. Monsters who are completely degenerate, lose their human form, lose all reason, and their desires collapse are real vampires. No vampire wants to turn into that kind of monster. Fighting against the evil energy in the body is the lifelong destiny of every vampire. Practicing bloody glory is different. Humans can also practice the secrets of the vampires, but the biggest difference between humans and vampires is whether they have performed mysterious rituals or have been embraced by high-ranking vampires. At the low and middle levels, whether it is practicing bloody glory or practicing authentic blood clan secrets, the difference between them and vampires is not obvious, but at the high level, there is a most obvious mark. Humans cannot condense blood cores and cannot upgrade bloody vortexes to vampire heart cores. There is no secret method to condense blood cores in the Protagoras scroll. As we all know, although this great philosopher of the human race lived a long life, he still died of old age like ordinary humans. No one knows why Protagoras did not turn into a vampire. It may be that he did not get the secret method to condense blood cores, or he may hate vampires and do not want to become them, or it may be other reasons. Charlotte has the Arthur scroll and the Adonis's blood clan secrets. Both blood-sucking scrolls have methods to condense blood cores. Lord Leo once said that if the Adonis blood clan used the Arthur secret method to condense blood cores, there would be a little problem, which would be detrimental to future growth, because the bloody glory opened by the Adonis blood clan's secret method was fundamentally different from that of Arthur. But Charlotte is not a member of the Adonis clan. He is a human who practices bloody glory. He has 6 bloody whirlpools. He can choose any bloody whirlpool to condense blood cores, and he can even choose multiple bloody whirlpools to condense blood cores. In fact, Lord Leo has not said a word. Although it is easier to use the vitality of others to condense blood cores and advance to a higher level, this kind of blood core is inherently the lowest quality, and it almost cuts off the way to continue to move up. After Charlotte was promoted to the middle level, he really wanted to try whether he could condense blood cores. He had no psychological barriers. Living as a human or as a vampire is not a big deal to him. In the old world and the new world, vampires can live in the sun openly in even established countries. The temptation to become an immortal species is quite big for anyone. Of course, if you become a vampire, there are some effects that cannot be ignored. Vampires can only embrace for the first time, but cannot reproduce. They are spurned by the gods. Not to mention the righteous gods, even the evil gods do not like the blood race. Only the ancestors of the blood race will protect their descendants. They will also lose some of their desire for life and are prone to depravity. Charlotte jumped off the wall and came to the middle of this group of Red Bear warriors, and took them to a market in Machupi, which is the commercial area within the Knights of Favonius, mainly the caravans of Louis Sami and Ross Bader. Machupi is only 200 kilometers away from Strasbourg, which is originally a commercial thoroughfare. Charlotte not only did not embarrass these businessmen, but called on the people of the Knights of Favonius to help, repaired the nearby houses, sorted out a very suitable place for doing business, rented the houses to the businessmen at a low price, and announced that commercial activities would be carried out here tax-free. It was only a few days after the promulgation of this policy, and the place was prosperous for the first time, and there was even a simple tavern. Charlotte randomly ordered a table of food for the dozen or so Red Bears, and asked someone to call the Yellow Bear over. The Yellow Bear was a demon hunter. Demon hunters need the heart core of a demon to take up the job, and their image will be transformed into a demon after taking up the job. For example, the White Wolf used the heart core of a demon wolf when taking up the job, and it looked very similar to a werewolf. with excellent speed, agility and endurance. The demon heart core used by the yellow bear when he was promoted was a demon bear, so he had thick skin and flesh, strong defense, and infinite strength. His role on the battlefield was not inferior to that of the blood butcher. He had experience in how to disguise orcs as demon hunters. No one knew the origin of the ancient orc ancestors, but there has always been a saying in the old continent that the ancestors of the orcs were also demon hunters. It's just that the current demon hunters can't rely on reproduction to pass on their power. And even their offspring are no different from ordinary people, making this statement unreliable. In any case, it is indeed feasible to disguise orcs as demon hunters. The bearmen such as the 100 Bears and the Big Bear Tyrant had not had a proper meal for a long time. They finally had a meal in the tavern. The beer was unlimited. The bearmen ate and drank freely, and finished more than 200 pieces of food, with an average of 1 barrel of beer per person. The Red Bear warriors were full and didn't care where they were. They just lay on the ground and wanted to sleep. Charlotte certainly couldn't allow this to happen. She kicked these filthy guys up and took them to an ancient abandoned military camp nearby. The bearmen slept loudly, not caring at all that they were in the enemy country. Charlotte thought of Frederica, and suddenly felt that the assassins of the Orc Assassin League were completely different from these bearmen. The assassins of the Orc Assassin League he had seen spoke and behaved just like humans. Except for some orc characteristics, they didn't feel rude at all. Frederica could even study at Gorgias University. But this group of bears gave him the feeling that the orcs in novels were just like this, rude, gluttonous, alcoholic, unguarded, and snoring loudly. Charlotte ignored these bears. He still had to practice. After returning to his residence, he suddenly thought, if I could recruit such a guard, I would be very impressive when I go out. It's a pity that Fars and the orc tribe are enemies now, and the orcs have joined the Byron side. He thought of several ways, but none of them seemed feasible. He also didn't know if this group of overbacked Red Bear warriors could be trusted, so he had to give up. Charlotte felt that they were too gluttonous and not as easy to raise as smart cats. Chapter 149 100 Maze Guards. Baron Feberly had received a piece of bad news every day these days. First, some of his collection of famous paintings disappeared. Every lost painting had the signature of the thief Hughes left on the place where the painting was originally hung. In fact, Charlotte did not take them away. These fragile paintings would be destroyed by the bad environment in a few days if they were taken to Machupi. They were just hidden so that Baron Feberly could not find them. Feberly would never believe that this guy named Hughes had such magical powers. After losing all the gold EQ and banknotes, it can still be said that this guy named Hughes was skilled and good at stealing. After all, gold coins and banknotes are easy to hide. But he was able to steal things under the strict defense of countless guards with several alert levels raised, and famous paintings were not easy to carry. The Baron was suspicious and thought that there was a traitor in the Silver Pigeon Castle. He was no longer willing to believe the original Pigeon Castle servants. After several rounds of investigation, he still could not find any suspicious people. He simply drove away all the old people and left only the people he brought from Strasbourg. Then, some of his daily necessities, such as tableware and precious jewelry, also disappeared one after another. This time, the signature left behind became, Handsome Virgin Hughes. At first, small things were lost, but soon large items, such as furniture, and his favorite carriage also disappeared inexplicably. When the carriage was lost, the signature in the stable changed to, Fresh and Delicious Handsome Virgin Hughes. This daring thief, from the relatively serious temporary leader of the Yugoslav Restoration Army at the beginning, the strange thief Hughes, the handsome Virgin Hughes, the fresh and delicious Hughes, all the way to moral collapse and moral decline. Feberly was really furious. He had no interest in the change of Hughes' signature. He just thought it was a clown-like provocation. He judged that the traitor came from his side, and it must be that the knights and the servants brought from Strasbourg were bribed. He personally interrogated several suspicious people and even beat several servants to death, but it was useless. In a few days, all the carriages in Pigeon Castle disappeared, along with a batch of supplies and weapons. Every time something was lost, Hughes' name was left behind, which frightened Baron Feberly to move in with the Grand Priest Ogsfredin at night. The Grand Priest reluctantly stayed for one night, but he was disgusted by the fact that he was neither young and beautiful, nor virgin, nor fresh and delicious, so he drove him away the next day. Fortunately, as most of the things were lost, Baron Feberly found that Pigeon Castle had become quiet again. He planned to wait for the second tax day, take a sum of cash, and then hurried back to Strasbourg to beg his sister for another loan. As for leading the knights directly under him to the Silver Pigeon Castle to fight Hughes's South Seraph Restoration Army outside the Silver Pigeon Castle and take back his wealth, it was never an option for the Baron. Charlotte didn't focus on moving wealth. He still practiced every day, waiting for the third maze of Machupi. Except that a group of Red Bear warriors ate a little too much, his life was quite peaceful. Machupi's third labyrinth was carried out step by step without any disturbances. On the 18th day, there was still no movement in the morning. In the evening, a thought came out from the diary. Machupi had completed the third labyrinth and had reached the upper limit. It could no longer be promoted. 100 labyrinth guards could be transformed. Charlotte had never encountered such a situation before and hesitated for a long time. He was a little confused. There were NPCs, so why did we need labyrinth guards? In fact, Charlotte didn't know, because he was an earthling. The labyrinth was transformed according to his will, and only then would NPCs appear. Orthodox labyrinths would have labyrinth guards. They were like humans but not humans. They were one with the labyrinth, wandering in the depths of the labyrinth, guarding the labyrinth and killing all invaders. Agmarus was an overseas labyrinth evil god. He was not only good at making labyrinths, but also good at making labyrinth guards. Although Charlotte didn't know what labyrinth guards were, she didn't plan to use them on the people of the Knights of Favonius. He thought for a while, then jumped up, stretched out his hand and pressed it on the ground. With the control of the maze, he sensed the 18 red bears and whispered, "Convert them into maze guards." Charlotte considered two ways to deal with this team of red bear warriors. One is to kill them and increase the bloody glory, but he recently planned to try to condense blood cores. This method of absorbing the vitality of others to condense blood cores will cause the blood cores to be mixed and impure, affecting future growth. One is to send them to receive merit. He had originally fooled the 100 Bears chief and the Big Bear tyrant, and they agreed to go to Mostar Castle, but although receiving merit is very good, how can it be compared with the value of the 18 Red Bear warriors converted into maze guards? Well, they are enemies anyway. No need to pity. There are 3 extraordinary orcs in this team. In addition to the 100 Bears chief and the Big Bear tyrant, there is also the oldest extraordinary old bear, named Shuangmi. When this old bear was young, he loved eating honey, so he gave himself this sissy name. The most rare thing is that these 3 extraordinary orcs are all mid-level orcs above level 10, but because of their strong bodies, infinite strength, and the heavy weapons they use, they can exert power on the battlefield, not inferior to ordinary high-level orcs. Bai Ziongyang, Dao Xiongba, Shangmi and other red bear warriors have been living very happily these days. They eat and drink enough every day, and then start practicing martial arts, completely forgetting that they have to investigate the death of Archduke Ferdinand. They were still vigilant at first, but after living in Machupi for more than 10 days, they had good food and drink every day, and their trust in Charlotte increased day by day, and they no longer wanted to go to Mostar Castle. Since Archduke Ferdinand is dead, their mission is considered to be completed. The bear people are a race that goes with the flow, and they are not in a hurry to go back to the south of the continent. They even think that life in Machupi is not bad. When Charlotte transformed them into maze guards, a voice suddenly appeared in the heart of the 100 bears, as if asking him, "Are you willing to stay in Machupi forever?" He answered without hesitation, "If I can eat and drink enough every day, and practice martial arts with my brothers, I am willing to stay in Machupi forever." His words seemed to be responded to. He felt a little heavier and had an extra set of armor, which was very majestic. The 100 bears found that his comrades seemed to have encountered exactly the same thing. Everyone changed into a set of armor, which was shiny and very close-fitting. If Baron Fabali saw it, he would definitely recognize these armors. These 18 sets of armors were all his things. They were supposed to be worn by his close guards. When he went out, they would gather around him, and he would be surrounded by people in front and behind, making him look handsome. Charlotte transformed the 18 overback red bear warriors into maze guards. She didn't feel anything happened, so she ran to find them in person. When Charlotte saw the 100 bears, Big Bear Tyrant, Shangmi and other bears, her heart suddenly felt cold. Chapter 150. Why do I believe this diary so much? This group of overbacked red bear warriors, when seen with the naked eye, are still rude, powerful, barbaric, heroic, and fierce, but Charlotte opened her insight and saw a group of monster bears that had completely lost their vitality, with gray fur and only faint white fire in their eye sockets. Charlotte did not expect that the maze guards would be such a thing. If he knew, he would rather kill these overbacked Red Bear warriors than turn them into maze guards. Charlotte even saw that when the 100 Bears chief picked up a barrel of beer and drank it happily, water stains kept oozing out of his chest and abdomen, which meant that the body of this bear had been permeated and could no longer hold food. Charlotte felt a slight chill from the depths of her soul. There are both righteous gods and evil gods in the old world. Whether it is the ancestor god of the Blood Clan or Agneris, they are all evil gods. They are called evil gods, not because their strength is not strong enough, but because their power belongs to the general category of evil energy. There is only one thing in the world that belongs to the general category of evil energy, and that is evil spirits. They are not living beings. Although they have all the characteristics of living beings, they have no life, cannot reproduce, cannot think, have no emotions, can only act according to some strange rules, and even have no desires. Vampires are actually a kind of evil. A very special kind of evil. Since he came here, he knew that his predecessor died by summoning the evil god, and he also knew that he practiced bloody glory, a strange ability that belongs to the general category of evil energy. However, because the matter of crossing is even more bizarre, he has always overlooked some details. The 2 volumes of diaries formed by the struggle between the remnant of the overseas labyrinth evil god Agneris and the wisp of thought of the Blood Clan evil god Karnstein, although they may cause the evil god to come again at any time, have also brought him countless benefits. Whether it is facing the spirituality of the evil god's improvement, the rapidly progressing bloody glory, or the increasingly mysterious power of the labyrinth. Charlotte even felt that the evil god was not so scary for a long time. As for the disadvantages, Charlotte did not feel it for the time being. Until this moment, Charlotte suddenly realized that she had been deeply trapped in it and was stepping towards the unpredictable darkness step by step. Charlotte took out the diary, and suddenly had a thought that she had never thought of before. Why do I believe in this diary so much? I believe that as long as I master 15 labyrinths and draw the 16th labyrinth to prove myself, Agneris will never come. I believe that as long as I master 17 pages of the Adonis Blood Clan secrets, Karnstein will no longer be able to do anything to me. I am complacent about my progress. I enjoy the convenience brought by the Blood Clan secrets and labyrinths, and I believe that I will eventually overcome the crisis of the evil god's arrival. But, when have the evil gods ever told the truth? Have they told the truth? How can this diary be trusted? Charlotte looked at this group of overbacked Red Bear warriors who had been transformed by evil spirits, lost their lives, and became the guards of the labyrinth, and a sense of fear arose. A great fear. It even reminded him of the time when he devoured a blood servant of Lord Leo and was attacked by the blood servant's boiling blood. That mysterious Blood Clan evil god actually helped him to cultivate the Blood Clan mantra in a friendly way. How could the evil god be so kind? Charlotte had a feeling that since he crossed over, a huge conspiracy had been entangled with him, but this conspiracy was so well hidden that he couldn't even find any clues. The reason why he had doubts and reactions today was not because he was so alert and found something wrong, but because he, as a crossover, couldn't quite accept that a group of living beings turned into evil spirits. Charlotte didn't know that the maze guards were such things. He thought they were just like the maze NPCs, except that they could issue and accept tasks and could be detected by him within a certain range, and they were no different from ordinary people. He didn't know that this was harming life and killing people. Charlotte suddenly activated the light agility technique and jumped to the highest point nearby. Looking at the people coming and going, bustling and living peacefully just like in the Silver Pigeon Castle, a terrible thought suddenly came to her mind. Will these NPCs turn into evil spirits one day? Charlotte didn't dare to think about it anymore. He suddenly jumped up and ran out of Machupi. When he reached the wilderness, he shouted with all his strength, "Aunt Karen, I have something to ask, Aunt Karen. Can I see her, Aunt Karen? Aunt Karen. Aunt Karen." Charlotte called desperately for 2 hours, but did not see Aunt Karen appear. His heart suddenly turned cold and he turned back to Machupi. 10 minutes later, he appeared in the Silver Pigeon Castle. Charlotte knew that this was the old world, with gods and extraordinary people. There must be someone who could answer his questions. Since Aunt Karen was not there, another saint could also be consulted. There was a big man in the Silver Pigeon Castle who could help him answer his doubts, the Grand Priest Augsrodin. Although this matter was very risky, he came to the Silver Pigeon Castle without hesitation. As the Grand Priest of the Lord of Light, Augustin might have problems with his moral integrity, but he was definitely a person with profound wisdom and insight into most of the secrets of the world. Charlotte also knew that he should be in the small town of Interlaken, fighting alongside Duke Joseph. His sudden appearance in the Silver Pigeon Castle raised many doubts, and the high priest might see through something, but he had to take the risk. It is better to face the holy order than the evil god. High Priest Augustin only lived in the Pigeon Castle for a few days before buying an abandoned mansion in the Silver Pigeon Castle and transforming it into the Temple of Glory. He came to the Silver Pigeon Castle not only to be a bodyguard for the Emperor's brother-in-law, but also to do other things, such as recruiting believers for the Lord of Glory. This Temple of Glory already has a small group of believers who come to pray every day. Charlotte wandered outside the temple for a quarter of an hour before she made up her mind and stepped into the temple. The first thing she saw was a group of immature teenagers who were learning the glory-breathing method. He had another purpose for this trip, so he didn't dare to think too much. He said to the temple attendant, Charlotte Mecklen, the commander of the patrol army in Lucavero district, the leader of the Knights of Favonius, and the 32nd level general clerk Charlotte Mecklen wants to see the high priest. The temple attendant showed a strange look and whispered, the high priest has been waiting for you, please go in directly. Charlotte suppressed the urge to explain that I am not here for special dedication and walked into the temple slowly. In a small quiet hall, he saw the high priest Augustin sitting alone. Charlotte was just trying to find the words to explain her purpose, when the high priest Augustin smiled and said, my child, are you confused? Charlotte took a deep breath and replied, yes, I am a little panicked. I have witnessed an ancient painting that is said to depict the true appearance of the overseas evil god. It was at an auction. Charlotte added an explanation, fearing that the other party would misunderstand. Grand Priest Augustin still had a smile on his face and said, oh, I know that painting. It is now kept at number 25 Midman Street in the hands of that lady. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.